business in the country. So we are seeing a lot of layoffs in media. We are seeing a lot of clawbacks in terms of what the media houses had planned for expansion and development. We'll be having a conversation this morning with a media owner, with a media manager, and also with a senior editor. So stick around. Keep it here. Stick around for that.
I'll join, don't worry.
But let's start with where we always start.
Okay.
COVID-19 in numbers.
COVID-19 in numbers.
Fellow Kenyans.
So we saw the numbers increase yesterday, which is what we were expecting. And then there are quite a number of other reports that have come out. But if we start looking at the numbers specifically, out of a sample of 2,000 plus, there were 200 and... just a minute, I need to find that exact number. I'll find it somewhere. 259 cases recorded yesterday. And so with the announcement that will be made today, reports are also saying that this will now send Kenya over 7,000. But we've also seen a report that has come out of Kemri saying that millions of Kenyans have already been exposed to the virus, according to this study that was carried out by Kemri Wellcome Trust, saying that at least 2.6, some are saying 2.7, yet others are saying 2.8. But okay, 2 point something.
What is the study saying?
The
Everybody
study
else can say whatever they want to say.
But this is what I'm saying, according to people and what the study has reported.
Okay.
But let's look at what the standard says. 2.6 million Kenyans may have already been exposed to the coronavirus, according to a study done by Kemri Wellcome Trust. It looked at the presence of antibodies in 2,535 blood donor samples from different regions in the country, and they used a formula involving the population in each region, and they were able to estimate the number of Kenyans that have been likely exposed to the virus so far. They developed an enzyme-linked immunosorbent that targets the protein of the SARS-CoV-2 that underwent a rigorous validation process and protocols before use in this study. Now, it sounds like a lot of science.
So it's called an ELISA test.
Okay, well...
ELISA.
Now... Okay, it's called an ELISA test. But now explaining exactly what it is that they did sounds like a lot of science, but basically what they did was to do this and say, okay, this particular test, and now use that against population in a particular region.
So they used donated blood samples.
When you donate blood, ostensibly with the view to it being donated to someone, it has to be tested.
Yep.
So, unless there are details of why it is they were testing it, it can be subject. Right now, if you have a disease like, or you have a situation like the one we have with COVID, when you have such blood samples, you will test.
Okay.
You see, what people often fear is testing blood with the names attached to it so that your identity can be known. But this is anonymous. When you donate blood, nobody knows it is your blood. No, not really. It's just blood that has been donated.
Okay. So they went to the blood banks and they were collecting samples for this particular ELISA test. Right? ELISA.
ELISA. E-L-I-S-A.
Okay. So for this particular test. Now, explain, CT, what it means when you say exposed to the virus. 2.6 million Kenyans exposed to the virus.
Exposed means that it is the likelihood of you having come into contact with someone who has contracted the virus.
Okay.
That is what it means. Like, for instance, if you talk about HIV, someone who has unprotected sex with someone who is HIV positive has exposed to themselves to being infected. Yes. If you have sex with someone who may be negative, but they have known to have had a sexual relationship with someone who has also tested positive, you have exposed yourself to HIV.
Not necessarily that you've tested positive.
No, but you have exposed yourself.
You're exposed to the virus.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So this is what it means. Not that 2.6 million Kenyans will be walking around here with COVID-19.
No.
Okay. And also, it's looking at specific blood samples of people who have donated blood randomly.
Right across the country.
Randomly,
country. Yes.
And this is different from what we may say is the kind of modeling that is done. We know these are the samples that we've tested around the country. these ones have tested positive. If we multiply with the sciences of how many people you're likely to have come into contact with, are we likely to see some correlation between
It
this
is
and
actually
that?
important to do that, because that is when now you begin to actually understand the depths of it. That comparison is a useful one. It's, for instance, if you were to take, again, in the case of COVID, you look at samples of the number, you sample the number of people who've tested positive with COVID vis-a-vis the number of people who've actually been tested in one part of the world. Take the same number of people who've been tested for COVID in another part of the world, and you look at what percentage of these people who are tested, how many turned positive. It gives you a good comparison. So that also helps you deal with the question of, if you don't test, then you can't know. Because you will find, for instance, that when you test, sometimes it doesn't really prove anything. You still find that a certain region still has many people testing negative.
Yep.
For instance, it's been argued that the number of people who test positive in the US are 10 times the number of people who test, again, positive in Europe, against a similar number over with similar tests. So the testing, so one can't say that our numbers are high because we've tested more. You see? It deals with that particular discussion. You say, no.
There's a percentage.
There's a percentage. It means there is an area where people are probably more predisposed. So you'll want to find out what is it about the genetic makeup that makes them more predisposed towards getting this particular virus.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Globally then?
All right, let's look at numbers around the world. We said, and by this weekend, we should, from all indications, hit about 11 million. Right now at 10,984,798. These are the numbers that we see on a global scale, 524,039 deaths. Interesting to note, and I think important to note, however, that 6,140,758 have recovered from COVID. And so then you have an active cases of almost 5 million. The United States inching closer and closer to 3 million cases. Still worrisome numbers for them as they continue to talk about the fact that, look, the president has said, we're okay with this, we're ignoring this. But people who are either in the medical field or his opponents politically have said, well, you can't turn a blind eye to this. This is serious, and more people continue to die, having crossed the 130,000 death mark early this morning. Mexico still continues to suffer this. Now almost 7,000 cases in the last 7 hours, with 10% of those resulting in death. Now, this is interesting. I looked at this a little bit closer. And these numbers that we are being given, it is not that people... Very interesting here for Mexico. It's not that people who were sick previously are dying. It is of the cases that were found positive in the last 7 hours. Of those cases, 10% are dying. So as they're being tested and they're found to be positive, it means either that they have been admitted into hospital, or they've been presented with other symptoms, or have been found positive when they're at the end of their tether and are giving up the ghost. So they're dying at this point, having been found
So they're
positive
dying
in a
within
very short
hours
period.
of being tested.
Yes. This is the thing. So somebody comes into hospital, presents themselves presenting with certain symptoms. They do a test, and it's too late. By the time they're being put on a ventilator or whatever else, it's done, unfortunately. And the cases are rising of this nature. So Mexico still one to watch for that, and still continues in South and Central America. Okay, South Africa now at... they're definitely looking at high numbers, but now with what they've been able to test and what they've been able to record, 168,061 positive cases in the country, with total recovered at 81. So they're looking at about half and half. 80,000, a little bit over 80,000, still presenting with symptoms, and the other half having recovered. So previously we had seen that in South Africa they were testing rapidly and quite vigorously, but people seem to be asymptomatic. But now you have about half that number under medical attention, not at home, but either in hospital or being treated by doctors.
Half of the positive cases, the active cases.
Half of the active cases
are in hospital
in South Africa. Okay, so we have 80,000 having recovered, around about that. Now, of that, and so that you have about 81 or 80, between 81 and 85,000 positive. Of that 85,000, half of those,
40,000 are in hospital.
yes, under care.
And out of those that go to hospital, what's the death rate?
So the death rate is still quite low comparatively. So you have in South Africa, the deaths are now at 2,844. So I mean, well under 1% of those are resulting in death. But they also still have a very good number of those even having presented in hospital, being cleared and then going home. Okay, so that's what we continue to see there. Some reports came out of Nigeria yesterday that a lot of the people who tested positive and may have presented with some symptoms are not going to hospital, and they can't seem to find them. Okay, but I still think we still have this whole.
Can't seem to find them.
This is what it came out from the government of Lagos, and it was a bit of an interesting story because the Minister for Health now said yesterday, he said, this is a bit worrying because we had people who presented with symptoms, and the reason why they were tested in the first place was because they presented with symptoms. We're not just doing random testing. So when their results were, they were not admitted at that time, but when the results came out, they were able to link the two. Symptom, positive result. It would be interesting it would be likely that this person would have come back to hospital or having been admitted. But in terms of tracing, either number one, people got better and decided to stay at home, or they decided to self-medicate. And this is an issue that they said is becoming a worrying trend.
Okay.
But
that thing of saying that they can't find them, what does it mean? When the person goes to the hospital presenting with symptoms and they take the samples for testing, don't they take any information about this person?
Of course, they take all the information, but I think the way in which he expressed it was very different from what the operation actually is. When you say you can't find them, it's because you're kind of expecting them to show up and they don't show up. So we can't find them. Not as though you went actively looking for them.
Yeah.
So that was a bone of contention yesterday. It sounded like you were searching for them and they disappeared from the country. But it was totally different in that light. Okay. If we just take a quick look at what is happening in New Zealand and the numbers that they've been able to record over the last 24 hours, is that New Zealand now has no new cases over the last 24 hours. Yesterday we saw that they had 2, but they've not recorded any. I think it's still keeping the straps quite tight. Testing anything that moves is what their prime minister basically said yesterday. It moves, we'll test it. It moves, we'll quarantine it and try to get ourselves back to where we were a couple of weeks ago. So that's what it looks like around the world.
All right. At 6:15, this is the situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll take a look at the weather. And as we do that, we want you to read the Standard newspaper this morning for a chance to win 1,000 shillings worth of free Safaricom airtime from a Safaricom mobile phone. If you have 20 shillings, at least 20 shillings worth of airtime, this is what is going to happen. Dial star 550 star 2 hash. That's star 550 star 2 hash. 20 bob worth of airtime, and you'll get to read the Standard newspaper, the entire paper, on your mobile phone, on your mobile device. You don't need to download any app. You don't need to sign up any form. You don't need to worry about having data charges or data bundles. Nothing of that sort. It's just 20 bob and you get to read the paper. So when you do star 550 star 2 hash, it'll tell you that you will receive an SMS shortly. Then you'll receive an SMS which has a link. Click that link. It opens up a page, Safaricom page that tells you, would you like to read the Standard? Is it just today's Standard? Would you like to subscribe weekly or monthly? So just select 20 bob for today and it opens up the paper. That easy. Now, keep it right here because shortly after this break, I'm going to ask you a question which gives you a chance to win 1,000 shillings worth of Safaricom airtime. Good morning.
24/7 around the world non-stop. This is Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
A little bit of a sprinkle in Nairobi this morning at 13 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions and temperatures dipping later on. We'll only see a high of 22 today, and chances of rain are high for much later in the day. Nyeri is cloudy this morning, and it's going to go into a weekend of rains today with a high of 21 and lows of 12. Nakuru at 14 degrees is mostly cloudy this morning. It'll be a wet afternoon as well with highs of 22. Looking into Eldoret, where it's clear skies at 13 degrees. It'll change later though, because 4 thunderstorms are forecasted for the afternoon with highs of 19 and lows of 12. Take a look into Kisumu, where at 19 degrees, partly cloudy conditions with highs of 27 today. Kakamega is going to be mostly cloudy, but it'll be rainy in the afternoon with highs of 24 and lows of 15. It's 23 degrees in Mombasa and partly cloudy, likely to continue this way for the rest of the day and well into the weekend, with some showers touted for early morning Saturday with highs of 29 and lows of 23. Partly cloudy conditions in Malindi at 25 degrees. We'll see highs of 28 and lows of 24. It's partly cloudy in Kampala. As we step out of Kenya, 20 degrees, we'll see highs of 26 and lows of 19. Dar es Salaam is clear skies this morning at 21 degrees. We'll see highs of 31. Taking a look then into Joburg, where it's a little bit warmer this morning than it was yesterday at 8 degrees. We'll see highs of 19 and come down to a chilly low of 3. All right, in Lagos, it's mostly cloudy at 26 degrees. Thunderstorms are forecasted for quite early on. Highs of 29 and lows of 23. Paris, clear skies and sunny conditions at 14 degrees. The sun is up quite early today. Highs of 24 and lows of 14. And in London, where it's partly cloudy at 13 degrees, we'll see highs of 22 and lows of 13. It's still Thursday night in New York at 28 degrees. When the sun does come up, it'll come to a high of 33 and lows of 24.
Hey, it's giving me that look of leo msema kesho ni mwongo, liar. Now, for a chance to win 1,000 shillings worth of free Safaricom airtime just by reading the Standard newspaper on your mobile phone, remember, dial star 550 star 2 hash. Go to page 8 and 9 of the Standard newspaper, and actually, bigger part of this is on page 9. There's a photo there on page 9 of the Standard newspaper. Page 8 on page 9. I'd like you to tell us what's happening in that photo. Read the caption of the photo and just a bit of what is happening in the photo. Page 8 and page 9. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. You got between now and 7 o'clock. Page 8, page 9. There's a photo there. Tell us what's happening in that photo. Read the caption. All right, CT. Today's proverb.
Today's proverb,
Leo ni leo.
Leo, comes from Uganda. If those with horns cannot manage, what about those without them? Let me repeat. If those with horns cannot manage, what about those without them?
Do?
Yeah.
You get it?
Got it.
What do you get?
You know, if you have the weapons for warfare, you have a struggle. Now you can imagine those who don't come prepared.
Okay. Self-explanatory. Very nice one. Very nice one. Let's take a look at the newspaper headlines this morning. Very interesting stories that we have. Let's start with the first one. What do you want to go with?
Which one is the first one?
The first one. On your list.
Okay. All right. So cruel killings cry our beloved children. Children, society's most vulnerable, are feeling the brunt of surging cruelty from close protectors to wider evil schemes. They are being mowed down. It's what's being looked at a little bit closely. Now, we see reports of this every day in media. Children being kidnapped, those being killed, unfortunately being buried, and you start to ask the questions in terms of what has happened. It's becoming, or actually it has been for a while, something quite serious. It's come now to the attention of many more people, and the questions are being asked, what really is going on? Why is it that the most innocent in society then are being mowed down? From West Pokot to Rift Valley to Nairobi County, I mean, across the country, these are stories that we are hearing about. In Naivasha, I mean, there's a funeral of 4 little ones who are being buried as a result of their lives being taken by their mother. One in West Pokot, where 2 children, aged 5 and 3, died in a fire after being knifed in a domestic quarrel between their parents, and their mother then killed shortly after. Again, we see the story of Henry Jackton 4 and Alvina Mudeo, who were found in the car boot just a couple of days ago after having decomposed, and we don't know when they died or when their lives were taken. That is still being investigated. But across the country, we're still hearing more and more stories of the lives of these children being taken, and then begs the question, what is really going on? And why is it that they then are bearing the brunt of this rising cruelty in the country? Are they a scapegoat for people's frustrations? A lot of times the explanations or the reasons that are being given are that I don't want my children to suffer because of what I'm suffering, so I'd rather take their life, or I feel some kind of anger and frustration, and they are the ones then that we take this out on. At the end of the day, this is going on. It still continues, and we're seeing the numbers rise. It could be that we're seeing more and more reported. But even
cases.
if we're seeing more reported cases, it still means that it's happening on a large scale.
And many of the times the explanation is very flimsy at best.
Yeah, wafer thin. I mean,
somebody murders children and buries them at a grave. Somebody murders children and leaves them in a house. Somebody murders children and puts them in the boot of a car. Somebody
has a fight with his wife and murders his children and burns the house down. I mean,
what's going through your mind, City?
What's going through my mind is death. Not just the death of children, but death. Seemingly wantons, seemingly unnecessary deaths that we've witnessed in the short while.
Yeah.
We started off by talking about people who died because they had been shot by policemen.
Mm-hmm.
Not in any, they just shot. Then we talked about domestic violence on the increase. And it was in the papers almost on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who bear the brunt of this seem to have been the women. Mm-hmm. Then you hear of some woman whose limbs were cut. Then you hear of one who's, atrocious things that are happening. Mm. Now the focus seems to have been on children.
Yep.
And children are being killed wantonly. And I was thinking, what is going on in our society? Mm-hmm. Because what I know for sure, we are only talking about what has been reported. What about what hasn't been reported?
Yep.
Because it can't be happening in one place.
No.
What is it that turns a human being to do the things that we are seeing people doing? What is it? That's what is going on through my mind.
Yeah.
Because, for you to do this, the one thing that has happened is you have disassociated yourself from what we call normalcy.
Yeah.
The way people do things normally, the way what we consider normal. You have moved away from that. Then you can then ask the next question. What is it that
Drove you there.
Yes. What took you there? Because you weren't always there. And if you are there in small doses, what is it that tipped you over the edge? And now it brings to question, the breakdown of our social structure that we talk of, but we perhaps maybe don't give sufficient attention.
Yeah.
It seems to point in that direction. Because everything that we're talking about, there's always a presumption when you hear people talking, but this shouldn't have happened. Remember, but he could have talked to the neighbor. Huh? All these things are presumptions that you have a social structure that still supports.
That works.
Yes.
And it clearly is not there. It doesn't exist anymore.
No, it has broken down.
broken
It has
down.
broken down completely.
This is a conversation that we should be having.
This particular one we
Like,
should have.
Complete, like on a regular basis, as communities coming together and trying to fix and trying, first of all,
Identify these things that are a problem
Yes.
and say, look, what really is causing this?
what's happening
What's happening?
and what is it that we can do.
When we talk about it not being there anymore, it's obvious that it was there before. And if you look at support structures that were in place, I mean, even as early as 10, 20 years ago,
Yep.
it has become that society has moved towards a more individualistic approach to things, whereas before you had
It was all
it was communal. You could go to someone, even if we're looking at men, for example, there was the older man, there was the group of men that you could go to and, share your problems with. It's interesting because I was currently reading the story of the tale of Baba Segi's wives, right? And it was an issue, a social issue, but he could go to his group of friends and talk about this thing that he
Yeah.
wanted to do, that he was thinking about.
Yeah.
And there was somebody who would call him a blithering idiot. There was somebody who would say that, okay, let me advise you in this way. But at the end of it, he had somebody, or he had a group of people.
He had a support system.
He had a support system that he could go to. Now, if you go and tell somebody, well, I'm not able to make it, I can't feed my family, one to the other, you'll be called a failure, number one. And everybody else is focusing on their own issue.
Yeah. Somebody's wondering, so why are you bringing
Why are
your
you bringing your problems to me? I have my own. I mean,
When you mention about group of men, let's really extend it and talk about it wholesomely. Group of women.
as well.
You knew. Now, you see, that is the assurance. So nothing could overwhelm you because you knew if it gets to a tipping point,
You'll tell your friends.
they'll
There's a
tell
place I
you.
can go to.
Yes.
You'll tell this.
I
The-
can
the
go to.
place I
I
can
can
go
go
to.
to this place. There are some places where it still exists. There are some places where it still exists, but you'll find that the labels that are given to those people who still have this support system are old and traditional.
Yep.
Who needs this kind of thing? But
Actually,
you realize when you look
the
at
word-
it, you
the
actually
word is
need
actually
it
backward.
Yeah,
backward.
it's backward.
But you find that look at what we're seeing now. We need things like this.
And they were duty bound to help.
Yes. Yes.
I-
Such
Actually-
that if something actually ever happened to you, then others would ask, but where were the other
Wazee
women?
walikuwa wapi?
Where were the wazes? Why
How did they allow
happen?
this to happen?
Who are his friends?
Yeah.
Who are her friends?
Actually,
Who are her
And the
people that
community
she
you
would
know
go
the group
to?
you speak of went beyond your friends.
Family
It
members,
was actually known as community leaders. I mean,
Religious
they're really
leaders.
These are the people.
structures in the community.
Yes. When things have moved, because you assumed at the family level the thing was unresolved.
Yep.
By the time it gets there, you go to the Supreme Court.
It's true. Things like the breaking up of marriages and things, you find people in your house. Where did you say you want to go? You want to split up because? And these are people who are not related to you by blood, but there's a support system who will say, look, there's a way to figure this thing out. How are we going to do that? It simply doesn't exist nowadays.
One of the deterrents to bad behavior as a young person was not your parents. Anybody who knew your parents seeing you doing something crazy, you would prefer they punished you. You'd even prefer that the school punishes you than the matter being taken to your
To
parents.
them, yeah.
Because there, you would see dust.
Because you've been reported.
Yes. Now, think of a situation now where a teacher punishes a student. Not caning them, just punishes, like stand in the corner, do the other. Well,
A meeting will be called. Both parents will come.
there'll be a parent who will arrive at that school breathing fire.
Don't do this to my children.
Without asking
What happened?
what actually happened.
Yeah.
Nope.
Because this is your child and the other children. So why your child?
Yeah. Let's take a break. 27 minutes to 7 o'clock. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, we are live streaming, and the live stream is up. SpiceFM KE on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. Ndu Oko, City Muga, and Eric Latif. We are looking at the big stories that have come out today. Good morning.
All right, Komarok has picked up already this morning, just right around 6:30. The traffic on the bridge towards Outer Ring and Kariobangi is jam-packed. Question is, where everybody is going this early, trying to avoid the traffic for later, most probably. Let's see how that unfolds as the minutes tick by. Coming down on Mombasa Road past Kitengela, it's not looking so bad right now. We know that it's going to clog up right around Cabanas and the SGR in a short while. So if you're not out yet, you might want to do that before traffic becomes a thing. The fog is quite low in certain parts of the city, so you want to be careful coming off of Limuru Road. It's actually, visibility is very, very poor this morning, guys. So you want to be very, very careful and slow it down just a smidgen. All right, we'll look at what it looks like in different parts of the city. We'll also look into other counties in the country this Friday morning. Likely to be quite busy as we're at the beginning of the month, but we'll have a look. SpiceFM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. We'll let you know what we see. You let us know what you do too.
You've got 24 minutes to win this 1,000 free airtime, Safaricom. And this is what we want you to do. Just download the standard newspaper.
Spice up your life.
Click, dial star 5.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Read it online. Go to page 9. And you'll see a big photo there that starts on page 8 and goes into page 9.
Mornings done right.
There are a couple of
94.4 Spice FM,
Who's in
Nairobi.
the photo? You can read the caption on the photo and just tell us the story. What's happening on the photo that we see on page 8 and page 9 of the standard newspaper? 0719 012 600. You get this right, and you have 1,000 shillings worth of free Safaricom airtime. So, interesting stories that are happening. KEB's boss arrested over graft allegations. So, the managing director of the Kenya Bureau of Standards, Mr. Bernard Njiraine, who has been in this office for only 15 months, was arrested yesterday by the EACC officers of allegations of corruption. And what are they accusing him of? They are saying that there's allegations of procurement irregularities, payment of bribes in respect of awards for tenders for provision of pre-export conformity goods, used motor vehicles, mobile equipment and spare parts by KEBS. Simple things as they sound. It's bribery, and procurement irregularities. The EFCC says in a statement that on numerous occasions they had requested for original documents from the MD who failed and or refused to comply, thereby continuously frustrating the timely conclusion of investigations in this particular case. So this was a view of obtaining the said documents and preferring charges against him for his contravention. This KEBS man, he becomes the fourth KEBS CEO since 2012 to face accusations of corruption in what could herald his exit. In 8 years, 4 MDs, corruption. I mean, you've just served 15 months and here you are facing accusations of this.
And we're talking about standards, no less.
Yeah, and you're talking about standards. This tells you a lot more also about, I think, about the management of this body from the board itself. Because how would we get to this point?
What is even of interest is, even with the appointments of each of these MDs, there was always disquiet.
There's always, yes.
Yes.
It's a push and pull. So I think it's a lucrative position, this one.
It must be, if you look at what they're supposed to oversee, man, it's extremely lucrative. It's extremely lucrative.
Where is money to be made?
Where is...
Because when I'm looking at it...
Where is it
in
that you
terms
can't
of
make money?
For example, these current accusations of procurement and giving out of tenders, it's in every...
No, it's not that.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, they're the ones who determine whether any product that is brought in this country is suitable for whatever purpose it is intended.
Yep.
Be it fertilizer, be it maize, be it sugar, you name it. Anything that is imported.
They'll give you the license.
They decide. If you remember, even prior to Njiraini,
Yep.
there was the issue of the guy who preceded him, was called Charles Ongwae.
Mm-hmm.
Among the things, them they were accused of something even interesting, attempted murder.
This is interesting, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then they were said to have released fertilizer into the market
Yep.
that had been damned and declared unfit.
Mm-hmm.
And they released it.
And they released it. And you know, when you're taking fertilizer, you don't talk about a bag, huh? You
About tons.
You talk about tons. Metric tons.
Metric tons of fertilizer.
Yes, exactly.
It's the same organization that had come to the fore when it came to issues of sugar. Remember,
Same.
sugar contaminated with, what was it? Mercury.
Yes.
This fertilizer, once again, there was that claim. But let's talk about that for just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that causes this problem is in the storage of the side items. If all you do is empty all of it into a container, all of it,
Yep.
and it's a metal container,
Yep.
right? Then any residue of any metal within that container will be part and parcel of what you've put there.
Yep.
Yes. And some of this sugar that we're talking about, you see, it wasn't packed in some neat packaging or it was poured into the container. So whatever...
Yes, some photos that are going around on social media, not just poured into some container, poured on the floor of some go down somewhere.
Now, what do you think is going to happen?
Go down floor, and then you have those tippers coming to
Yes.
collect it and put it.
And go downs, there's no limit to what go downs have actually, should we say, housed over the years?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's where the problem comes in, really. Yes. It's not as though somebody looks at the good being brought in and somehow they find a way of injecting mercury into it. No.
No.
It's in the...
Picked up along the way.
Yes, it is.
With all this transportation. Okay.
What else?
So, now you see me, now you don't. The government has made a U-turn and will now reintroduce the 20% excise duty on sports betting in the next 6 months. The tax was quietly removed in suspicious last-minute changes to the finance bill that was signed into law by President Uhuru Kenyatta earlier this week. This follows concerns that the government had had a change of heart on the controversial tax on the multi-billion shilling sports betting industry, which was part of the reason that the two biggest players in Kenya, SportPesa and Betin, had closed shop. It also emerged that another mysterious investor incorporated in Delaware, a U.S. state with high levels of corporate secrecy and zero tax tax rate, has also acquired a significant stake in SportPesa, which until last year was East Africa's biggest betting company. So, Treasury CS Ukur Tani said the excise tax was removed through the Finance Act 2020, but the government had not reneged on its commitment on taxation of the betting industry. He also turned the spotlight on the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning, chaired by Kip Kellyon East MP Joseph Limo, which presided over the suspect changes. So, suspicious, mysterious, suspect.
Suspect means what? That it wasn't debated on the floor of the House?
Yeah, it just
was
kind of found its
introduced
way in the door.
Yeah, but nobody raised an issue.
Nobody raised an issue with it, it went through. Okay, it's kind of like you say, okay,
And
so
you cannot amend
know
this
that
law
you've been sent to
until
buy
6 months are
tomatoes
over.
and you've been sent to buy tomatoes and peppers and it's on the list. Then you say, okay, I'd like tomatoes, peppers, bread, and some other. So the bread slips in there somewhere, and that's kind of what happened here.
You know, this raises a very serious issue, and I keep talking about our National Assembly and the way the National Assembly operates. If indeed a law came and some few people connived to insert some amendments to that law, and it passes, it goes all the way to the president, is assented, becomes law, right? That raises questions about integrity of parliament. But at the same time, if we are saying that the same can be reintroduced in 6 months' time, let's see how much lobbying is going to be done to convince members that it's important to reintroduce this 20% excise on winnings. This is where now the issues come in, man. So the CS for the National Treasury.
I quote, the removal of this tax happened during the committee stage of the bill, following various consultations in line with the government's commitment to mitigating against the social vices associated with betting activities. The National Treasury and Planning will be proposing to the National Assembly the reintroduction of excise duty on betting within the next 6 months. So, it's all coming from a vice point of view now. The only way now to curb this vice socially is to impose tax. And so maybe you won't be too excited about betting if you know that some of your money is going to be going to the government. No? Yes.
You say it was removed in the committee stage
Yes.
of Parliament.
Yes.
This is proper process.
Yeah,
now,
it was done right.
those who are saying that it was, mysteriously,
procedural.
it was not procedural, they should come out clearly and indicate how this happened. Because if it happened in the committee stage,
What's the problem?
what's the problem? Are you saying that the committee was not aware?
Committee-
Are you saying...
committee is procedural?
Yeah. Unless you're saying that the chairman of the committee went ahead and inserted this and did not get the other members to discuss it and agree.
And assent to it?
Yeah.
Well,
And then the other members signed that this is what we have agreed in this committee without necessarily knowing what they had done.
I think a number of
Which
things are being
raises
said
those
without...
issues
Yeah, a
of-
number of things are being said without really being said. And that's clear here.
What is the tax, the government tax on beer?
Many taxes, excise.
They're quite a number. Yeah, they're quite a number.
Yes. Now, it's the truth of this is, has it ever deterred the consumers of that product from consuming it?
No.
It hasn't deterred.
What has happened?
What it has done, though, is, the higher the taxes on the premium beers pushes people into the unregulated beers. And that's why now also the government came to encourage the big brewers to come with those products that are considered cheap. And in this new bill again, the new laws, they have introduced higher taxes on the kegs.
You know why they don't assist those so-called unregulated distillers and brewers to actually make this thing legal? I don't understand. But that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
The point I'm getting at is, if they think that by raising taxes on gambling, they are suddenly...
gonna stop
Remember,
people from-
it wasn't the gamblers.
It's introducing barriers.
Yes, but it isn't. The people who pitched the fit were the owners of these betting companies, not the participants.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
So that's why this bill, this new tax, the excise tax, is actually coming for you. Because it's saying that this 20%, the 20% excise is withholding tax on winnings.
You know,
So basically it's saying that how much you've invested and how much
I
you've
want,
made,
I
there's
want
gonna
to
be a
assure
higher
you that
tax.
it's going to be tricky. If it is, you're talking about betting on, say, football results and so forth, where there's actually a record of the number of people who actually bet and what they bet and the winnings, and it's clear, isn't it?
Yep.
It can be taxed. If someone is gambling in a casino, all right, and they win. They continue playing, they lose. Or they're playing slot machines and they win. I'm simply saying the monitoring of these activities to ensure that you collected 25% excise is going to be very tricky. It is straightforward when you're talking about betting on football results. If you talk about other activities that fall under the same category but are in casinos, it'll be a little more, should we say, complicated.
Their target, the target of the government is actually not going even for the casinos, gambling in casinos. It's going for straight into that betting. The betting industry that had mushroomed and had attracted these young people who had gone into betting, because that introduction was 20% of the amount staked. If you bet with 100 bob, just know that your bet is actually 80 bob, because 20 bob is straight
Goes
going into
straight,
tax. You're
yeah.
being taxed.
If
What they're trying to do is introduce that barrier so that you're like, so
all right,
nieke 80
if
bob,
that is the way they are doing it,
Mia,
then it makes sense that they will get what they want.
because they're coming now for the person who's betting. And the same argument and the same push is, this is what we want to do. We want to ensure that the people who are betting have a barrier in an entry. Let's go to the phone lines, because we are giving away 1,000 shillings worth of free Safaricom airtime. Just want you to go on to, what page is this? This is page 9 of the Standard newspaper. This morning, there's a photo there, and we'd like to know who is in that photo. Dennis in Limuru, good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Nairobi is cold. I cannot imagine how Limuru must be this morning.
Yeah,
Oh,
man,
nice
it's freezing.
Hey, poleni, my brother. Poleni
Okay.
sana. Now,
Yeah.
page 9 of the Standard,
Yeah.
There's
It's 9 or 8.
page 8 and 9.
Oh, okay.
There's a photo there of some gentlemen.
Yeah.
What's happening on the photo?
Yeah, I can see a trolley. And the headline is 62 billion debt waived.
Sorry, say again the headline.
The sweetness for cane farmers is 62 billion debt waived.
All right. So the photo continues into page 9. You see the bigger part
Yeah.
of the photo on page 9?
Yeah, let me try and load it. Yeah, there is farmers bitter sugar millers cross to Uganda for cheap cane while they years rot.
And
Yeah.
in the photo, who else do you see
Yeah.
in the photo? Oh, sorry, we lost Dennis. Dennis, you can call back and try and answer this, because we'd like to know who else is on this photo and the caption of the photo. There are some gentlemen who are standing at the steps of Harambee House, and we just want to know, who are these gentlemen? Who's in the photo? What's happening on this photo? This is how you get to win 1,000 shillings worth of Safaricom airtime. Just go to your Standard newspaper, star 550 star 2 hash, and once you get there, you go to page 8 and page 9. The bigger part of this photo is on page 9. On this page, there's some gentlemen at the steps of Harambee House. Just tell us, who are these gentlemen? And Dennis answered part of this question and said, this sweet news for cane farmers as 62 billion shilling debt is waived. Let's take a quick break, come back out of it. 0719 012 600. Good morning. And Dennis, you can try calling again.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
So 0719-012-600. If you download the Standard newspaper on your mobile device by dialing star 522 star 550 star 2 hash, you go to page 9, you will find a story there that has the headline, "Sweet news for cane farmers as 62 billion shilling debt is waived." And then there's a photo that extends from page 8 onto page 9. We were speaking to Dennis just before we went to the break, and Dennis has called back. Dennis!
Yeah.
Pole sana, I can imagine you really need this airtime, man.
True.
So on page 9, Dennis, quickly, so we don't finish your airtime, what's happening in this photo, the caption?
So actually, I had only managed to load up to the 8th page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's the way I had gotten the question. So I've not managed to load up to the 9th one.
Okay.
So I can only see the half up to Atuoli's face.
Oh, up to the Atuoli side. So the other side, the caption of this is President Uhuru Kenyatta, when he met leaders from Western Region at Harambee House, Nairobi yesterday, they were meeting to discuss development projects.
Okay.
In the photo, now you've seen Atuoli on one side, there's the president in the middle, there are other leaders from the Western Region, governors from the area, and Devolution CS Eugene Wamalwa.
True.
Yep, so that's what's happening. Now, because I've established that you've actually downloaded this newspaper.
Yeah, I've downloaded.
Let me just give you this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Wacha na hiyo baridi yote ya Limuru, wacha ninunue chai.
Sawa, asante sana, barikiwa.
It's 1,000 bob worth of airtime. Speak to our producer John. He'll get your details.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Okay, have a good one.
City, 62 billion shillings debt waived. 62 billion from the sugar companies there.
Yes.
The debt owed by sugar millers to government in loans, taxes, fines and penalties. Miwani Sugar, 27 billion. Muhoroni, 25 billion. Sony, 6.2 billion. Chemelil, 6.1 billion. Zoia, 21.2 billion. How did you get here?
Who
owns these sugar companies? Government.
Let's ask the question in context. What is the total production vis-a-vis the consumption of sugar in this country? All these mills put together can only produce up to 30% of what is actually consumed in the country. In terms of metric tons, they produce 440,935 metric tons. And what is consumed is 1.4 million metric tons. So the shortfall there,
58%.
So it means that you actually do need to import. Now, where the anomaly comes in and where the stranger than fiction situation arises is that here you have this unique situation where demand outstrips supply. So it is not possible for them to actually be in debt for the simple reason that anything that they produce will be consumed. They can produce as much as they can to their full capacity, it will be consumed. There's a market waiting for them to deliver.
Market for this.
So how do you then go broke?
So I see what they were discussing yesterday is, in addition to this, instead, there was a bid to privatize all these sugar millers, right? Put them in private hands, let the private companies run them, like we saw with Mumias. So instead of going that route now, the discussions yesterday went into the area of saying, we are going to lease the companies to private individuals. So you come and sign up a lease of X number of years and you run it. So this whole issue of, forget about the capex of having to come up with money to buy off this from the government, is just going to lease it.
That is all good and well. I come from Muhoroni. And what always comes to mind is a time when I was a much younger individual. I actually was young at some point. And sugar, we're not talking about the big holders of 100 acres, 200, 300 and so forth. People who had 10 acres, 2.5 for homestead, the other 7.5 as a farm. 3 ratoons, 2.5 acres, 2.5 acres, 2.5 acres. The money they got from their cane was enough to educate their children, not in just the local schools, no. When they went to secondary school, to even high-cost schools, and even university abroad, sugar cane. So a sugar
It was
cane,
profitable.
yes, people bought tractors. People were able to buy matatus. In short, a sugarcane farmer was a wealthy person. And then came the period when a lot of things changed, and suddenly, in fact, let me give the perfect example. Chemelil Sugar Company, this is something that I always found amazing. During the era, there was one particular gentleman who was MD of Chemelil. In his time, the factory even managed to build a school. Chemelil Academy. A school, which is one of the top national schools we have in the country. Meaning, the corporate social responsibility went far beyond what you'd expect. Meaning, the sugarcane factories were actually making money.
So when did the rain start beating them?
The rain started beating us when
And who was the cloud?
the rain started when people who were brought in to manage were politically appointed. But the political appointment was not the real problem. But their agenda was not to grow the factory. The agenda was to plunder it.
That's it. Let's discuss
they
a
were
little
able
bit
to
of that
fulfill the
into the
agenda.
next hour. As we go to the top of the hour, just remind us today's proverb from Uganda.
If those with horns cannot manage, what about those without?
If those with horns cannot manage, what about those without? Keep it right here. The conversation continues. We'll look a bit deeper into what's happening to the sugar sector in this country, these efforts at reviving the sugar sector and all these other factories and the industries in various parts of the country. Do they make sense or do they not? Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
All right. Okay, guys, bikers are being asked, and those who are exercising on the major highways this morning, remember to put on your reflectors, or at least, throw your head out the window and shout and say, come on, guys, reflectors necessary this morning. All right, Kangunda Road is flowing very smoothly this morning, not much of an issue. We know that right around Mombasa Road, there's a hold up right after the Gateway Mall, all the way to the JKIA turnoff. That's normal. It will happen this morning. And Komarak is still experiencing that outer ring Kariobangi traffic this morning. Jogo Road also is quite clogged up, heading towards the City Stadium roundabout and then towards industrial area or towards the CBD. Thika Road now is joining to that pile-up where we have some traffic all the way far back at Safari Park Hotel. It is a Friday morning. It is the 3rd of July. We expect this to be, hopefully, will not be too painful. Where it does, do share. SpiceFM KE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know what you see. It's a Friday morning and we want to keep it moving.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic,
That's 2.5 minutes
seasoned political
past 7
observer,
o'clock.
a
The
fountain of
Situation Room, the conversation continues. Sweetie, I call you Sweetie Muga. As we talk about the sweetness of sugar this morning, you were explaining what you saw in Muhoroni and what you also saw in the sugar millers around the area, right? So first of all, explain the ratoon business. You're saying A farmer with about 10 acres would have 2.5 acres for
That is
homesteads.
for your home, okay? And it's actually a very interesting way because what they did was homesteads were cordoned off in one area, okay? So you more or less live in a
village, in a
yes,
town.
it is a village. Call it a village, okay? Then the farms are separate.
Beautiful.
Yes, and the 7.5 acres. So they had each divided in 2.5 acres portions, 2.5 acre, 2.5 acres. Now the term ratoon actually refers to this apportioning. It's with reference to how you plant and then also how you harvest. And each one you had 3. So you have portion 1, 2, 3, and it is documented even with the factory, so they know. Now, the harvesting was not only on time, but so was the payment. And then they had a SACCO, okay, for the cane farmers that also worked. This is where you were able to sort of like, if you wanted credit for fertilizer, you could get.
So your inputs basically.
You could get from them, and
them.
you could rely on it. And they were associated with the factory, so the documentation went straight to the factory. So when a check was supposed to be out, the relevant deductions could also be made. If you needed money, an advance of sort, they would also make the arrangements for you to have that advance.
So which year did this thing start failing? Around which year?
In the 80s is when it started.
Started now going down.
No, it didn't.
Politics
came in. It didn't actually go down. It started slowing. There was a slowing down, then it started going down. Okay?
And you're saying that it's because of the appointments into the management of these
factories. It's the politicization of some of these things, and the people who were put in there, the interest that they had, as I said, was clearly not the interest of the farmer or the factories. Because one of the things also that was true about the sugar the sugarcane industry, it had a sugar board. Okay? And then they had a research wing. They were well funded, and the funding came from what you call cess.
Yeah.
That was deducted from the farmer and also paid to these organizations. So even in those days, they had hundreds of millions of shillings almost literally just sitting there. So this was going to attract some people at some point. That's number one. Number two, most people who got land in Muhoroni didn't go and buy it per se. You paid a deposit to register your name with it. And then your cane paid off what the value of the land was over a period of time.
Okay.
And when you had paid it off, they structured it well in that you would always get some money, but they would show you. It was a clear list of what was deducted, how it was deducted, what went towards the loan, and what was given to you. And that always matched the check that you're given in your name. Yes. So up until the time you cleared the loan, that's the point where now you could actually get a title for your piece of land. I'm sure this is the thing that was followed right throughout the places like Sony, which is the South Nyanza Sugar Company, places like Zoya. It was the same thing over and over. Now, what is of interest, these schemes that you hear of, they are part of a settlement scheme. They are all settlement schemes. And you would be one of the people who oversaw these developments was none other than the late John Michuki. He's among the people who actually oversaw this. There are other people as well. But I'm simply saying you're talking about a period when the projects that the government set out to do were actually done. And they achieved what was achieved. You've heard me say on many occasions, we seem to have just the clock and we
completely,
and
right?
we just seem to be moving backwards and backwards and backwards.
So what do you make of this? When you hear that the government is talking about now, let's waive this debt, 62 billion shillings of debt waiver, the story about sugar and reviving the sugar sector in the country has gone on for like over 2 decades.
It has.
Same conversation. Let's reconstitute the sugar board. The sugar board is not working for us. Let's come up with new measures. All this. Now we have gotten to a point you're talking about debt waivers. Then we're talking about privatization. Before privatization kicks off, we are now saying, no, let's not go to privatize. Let's have leasing of this. Do you see, is any of this giving you light at the end of the tunnel?
No, it isn't. And why it isn't is this. very many cane farmers simply stopped farming cane. I being one of those farmers. Because it didn't make sense. You plant cane, it's harvested. You've paid for all the inputs, so all you're waiting for is to be paid.
Yeah.
Man, the thing takes over 2 years.
On one harvest?
Yes.
Wow.
So sometimes the harvest of the other portion may catch up with this one and still no payment. Now, if this is what you're relying on, what on earth are you going to do with yourself? It didn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
And then there was the pilfering. You are robbed when they are loading your cane. You are robbed at the factory when they are weighing it. So you have to have your own people at these stages. Because we had people who would get checks and didn't even have a farm.
Oh my goodness. Talk,
Kenya.
about,
So what
talk about Houdini
Kenya.
disappearing
Yeah,
acts.
you
My
talk about
good
magic.
Lord.
So, because what happens is, if, say, for instance, they've harvested 100 tons, they'll write 80. The other 20 is divided among some other people. Yes.
So maybe this leasing maybe would be a good thing. So a private entity comes, the government still owns the infrastructure and everything and the title, but they lease it out, and then this private company comes and it seeks to make money.
Why doesn't the government consider also ensuring that the farmer, because he's a contributor to the welfare of this factory and has land which is equity, why doesn't he consider engaging the farmers within their circles, or the circle of the farmers, to also own a portion of these factories?
That's why this is that's the route I'm seeing being taken here.
I
You
will
see, a
wait to
private
see it.
company would be. The next thing that you're going to hear is a local politician saying, let's come together, let's form this company.
The circles exist,
So as we come together
and farmers
form
are
this,
registered within those circles.
So let's
Already
go and lease
registered.
this particular factory. The disconnect somewhere for me is, if the government still continues saying that it owns and it's the one that is leasing out, then you still have politics playing
The politics will continue.
this hand here.
It will
And the reason
continue.
why the government wants to still continue owning this piece of land, this property, is to play politics with it.
Yes, it
You see, we are
it
the ones who
is.
came to help you. You know, we are the ones who are waiving the debt. This company has not paid its lease for X number of years, so it still owes the government. So let's waive it. Political moves.
You know, when the government owns it, it lends itself to truths and untruths of really enormous proportions. Because even when something that could have gone wrong just goes wrong, it'll be considered political. Because for the longest time, there's been a feeling that the sugar industry was sabotaged deliberately because it came from one particular area. Predominantly so.
Yeah.
And it was like,
So
listen,
just bring down the economy of
yes,
Nyanza.
exactly. To understand this thing, understand the woes of the coffee farmers.
Yeah.
Coffee has its seasons, in that if there's frost in places like Brazil or some of the bigger producers, and as we have coffee, the coffee boom people talk about, it was because there was frost in Brazil. So the demand for coffee continued. Now,
yeah.
Kenyans made a boon. Because Uganda was in turmoil, their coffee, which would pass through this country, don't think we invented pilfering in the 21st century. No. It was there even then. A place called Chepkube was famous, a famous crossing point for people who were smuggling coffee.
Yeah.
Now, over the years, the coffee industry has gone through the ups and downs that, say, something like the tea industry goes through. But if you listen to the complaints in the areas where coffee is grown, they'll tell you it was sabotaged.
It was.
They tell you it was sabotaged. And you know, it lends itself to some truth. Coffee is the one industry where the people who grow coffee had advanced the process of managing this thing to the point where they should have had a direct market for their coffee.
Yeah.
Not going through a myriad middlemen. Again, it's like those fellows who receive checks and don't have farms. You have a middleman who's making money and doesn't grow coffee.
Doesn't grow coffee.
I mean,
Yes.
Coffee, same. Tea, the same.
Same. Someone is making money and
they're not even in the process at all.
No, they're actually not needed. So this is where the politics comes in.
And it's the reason why I'm not really feeling comfortable or confident with the moves. So you politicians are sitting together and saying, let's come up with a structure, and the structure is going to be that private entities are going to lease this from the government. The government will still continue owning it. So this private entity will basically come. It will be owned by one of these political hotshots.
And his cronies.
Come, take up this facility, never pay a dime to the government, never pay a dime to the farmers, collapse, and,
we move on like nothing happened.
Yeah, because the government owns this factory. The government now comes back to the farmers to play the politics of, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to help you.
When you have a product, honestly, that has a demand such as the one that sugar has, in all honesty, you cannot explain in any logical way why it is those who farm this product cannot make money.
Yep.
Did you notice a time when the coffee prices in the world shot up? Countries like Ethiopia that didn't play as much politics as us, man, the farmers were singing and swimming in it.
Yep.
Even our neighbors who grow coffee were doing well. Here, our farmers were mourning. Mourning. Because somewhere along the line, something wasn't being done right. And the people who were behind it, we had a coffee board that worked wonders with the coffee industry. Wonders. I remember there was one particular MD and there was a complaint which even went to Parliament why that guy was being paid the money he was being paid. And the farmers who came to support and said, but he's doing a very good job.
Oh, wow.
we are not complaining about what he's being paid. Why are you complaining?
Why are you complaining?
Yes.
He's doing a good job.
He's doing a very good job for us. He is serving our interests well.
Bas.
So why shouldn't he be paid well?
14 minutes after 7 at the Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, you are able to watch our live stream on www.spicefm.co.ke as well as SpiceFM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's take a break, take a look at the weather, and then we come back and look at international headlines.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, warming up slightly, ever so slightly in Nairobi this morning. 13 degrees, but we're still going to see that sprinkling for a while, and cloudy conditions will continue through most parts of the day with highs of 22. Looking then into Nyeri, where we'll see highs of 21 with showers later on in the afternoon. And in Nakuru at 22 degrees, it'll be a wet afternoon too. Looking into Eldoret, thunderstorms are expected later with highs of 19 and lows of 12. It's 27 degrees, the high in Kisumu today, and partly cloudy conditions. In Kakamega at 24 degrees, we'll see showers throughout most of the afternoon. All right, Mombasa, where it's currently at 23 degrees, is mostly sunny. We'll see highs of 29 and lows of 23 today. In Malindi, it's partly cloudy at 25, highs of 28 and lows of 24. And then in Kampala at 19 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 18. Taking a look then into Dar es Salaam, it's clear skies this morning at 22 degrees, highs of 31 and lows of 21. And in Joburg at 7 degrees, it's clear skies this morning, highs of 19 and lows of 3. And finally, for now, we'll take a look into Lagos, where it's mostly cloudy this morning at 25 degrees. Rain to start any moment, but through today, we'll see a high of 29 and lows of 23.
Now, there's this man who had been arrested in the U.S. on allegations of child sex trafficking, billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. Then he was found dead, alleged that he had committed suicide, and nobody seems to have believed this story of that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide, all right? So his longtime girlfriend, a lady called Maxwell, had gone missing for a long time. So people had even started saying that, even her, she had committed suicide or she had been killed. Now, she was arrested yesterday. This brings the story of Jeffrey Epstein back up to the top of the headlines and what was happening and the number of influential people who have been mentioned in connection with Jeffrey Epstein and maybe who are also alleged by some people to have participated in child sex trafficking, including Prince Andrew, the Queen's son. So, with this arrest now, the Daily Telegraph has the headline, "The Duke has been urged to help with U.S. inquiry as Maxwell is charged with grooming girls." So Maxwell is one who was accused of, she's one who would go and, sweet talk the girls, bring them to Jeffrey.
It's called procurement.
Procurement, if you want to use that word. Bring the girls to Jeffrey, and then Jeffrey would bring the girls to the high society, and the high society would get to...
Essentially, they were pimping.
Yep. Long and short. So now there's pressure on the prince to collaborate with these investigators.
At the heart of this is that these were underage girls.
Yep.
Yes. Not that they were pimping. Underage.
Underage children.
And they're prominent.
Knowing full well that this is what you're doing, and knowing full well that you're basically luring them into this trade. And the prominent people who are involved in this. So it's a big story that seems not to end. Some people are saying, oh my goodness, already started to send messages of condolence to Maxwell because she was going to commit suicide. Like Jeffrey did.
There are tragedies upon tragedies. There are people who actually trade directly, just like people sell coffee.
Yep.
They trade in the lives of human beings. But one never gets to know who
in this day and age.
Oh yes, in this day and age. One never gets to actually know who they are. What has come to the fore through BBC was the buying and selling of house help in the Middle East. And it is considered normal.
Mm-hmm.
Normal. If I recall some of the discussions that I listened to on radio of someone saying, this girl is very well behaved. You'd think they're discussing a horse. This one is very, very well behaved. Okay, we'll perform all the duties you ask her to perform. And I'm thinking, what on earth?
Imagine.
And they consider it once again normal.
Normal. Mm-hmm.
And also in this trade, some of the young ladies in question, young ladies, are underage. But this hasn't acquired the sort of publicity that this one of Jeffrey Epstein. Well, one, his own prominence. Secondly, the association. Just one individual, Prince Andrew. So one then assumes that there must be other high-end individuals who are involved in this business.
Yeah, for sure.
Names have come up.
So wherever they are,
Trump's name has come up. Bill Clinton's name has come up just because of their association, known public associations with Jeffrey Epstein, and whether they've ever visited any of Jeffrey Epstein's houses and homes, and then they say, "Yeah, I was there for a meeting, or I was there for." I never saw any girls. It was just a social visit. Yeah.
And the stories go on, isn't it?
Yes.
And this one has refused to die, hasn't it? because usually you'll hear it takes center stage for a period.
It was expected to die with him.
Yes, it didn't.
It didn't.
And it hasn't.
Now Maxwell is here.
Oh, no. The Queen's son is there. And I don't think that there's anything that really catches the eye of newsmakers more than the royal family.
Oh, yes.
Anything to do with the royal family, it makes headlines. And that news is milked for what it's worth for the longest time possible.
Anyway, let's come back to the country. And the president was overseeing the closure of training of officers who will oversee the rollout of Kazi Mtaani across the 47 counties yesterday. He was at KICC. You know, this is 10 billion shillings earmarked to the youth in the 47 counties. About 300,000 youths are set to benefit in this. Kazi Mtaani. Go and clean up your neighborhood and we give you some money. This is cash transfer, just ensuring that we also engaging the youth in something during the day. Okay? The fear has been that 10 billion going to the youth across the country.
Passing through the hands of...
Passing through the hands of... this money is going to go. So Uhuru was warning officers that embezzlement will not be tolerated.
But
Suggesting that there's a time when it was tolerated.
when it was tolerated. We used to tolerate it before, but this one, for this 10 billion, we're not going to tolerate it. But we already know that some of this money is already being lost along the way. It's
In
already
the pilots,
seeping through
in the pilot
at
counties.
the pilots. It's not the pilot that you use to determine if you're going to go into the project. And if at the pilot, for example, we already heard stories that, individuals who should have been paid a certain amount already, not half, but a significant amount of that money already disappears before it gets into their hand. So this warning may be just that.
So this
Or
is,
it could just be an acknowledgement of, I am aware of what happened.
he knows. He knows. I mean, when you give out some 10 billion shillings like this, even the president clearly knows. And he listens to this show. He knows what we talk about and what people say when they call in. So it's going to be rolled out by going to the very level of estates, right? So president says the initiative will be used. Nyumba Kumi leaders and the local leaders, local elders, are the ones who are going to identify the needy,
That's where the
youth.
That's where the problem will
Now
start.
take it up.
That's where the problem will start, because
You will have people whose cousin, auntie, brother may not be
even some who had
disadvantaged.
died.
Yes.
They will be working in this scheme. Wait and see.
Kuja
So-
ujiandikishe.
So long as somebody then is in control of who gets a position in this Kazi,
Yep.
forget it.
When it comes to those things of kujiandikisha, when we spoke to the fishermen in Kilifi, remember the mzee, the fisherman, and the woman,
Yes.
and they were saying that somebody had actually come and told them, jiandikishe, put your name down. They went and registered, and they've never heard anything about it. Of
We
course,
also
you
had,
know that their name is being used somewhere else.
Our friend in Kisi told us the same thing about those who were told to bring down to write their names for those who living with disability,
Yes.
who are going to get some kind of reprieve from the government.
Yep.
And suddenly
And
somebody
somebody with a
decides it's
broken
just
finger.
100. Somebody with a broken finger compared to one who is completely blind.
Yep.
How do you make
What about
comparison?
my
How do you make the
colleague-
decision?
My colleague in Kibera.
Yep.
Because, I keep asking. And he says, we even went and registered somewhere.
And then they saw
My
someone
friends-
carrying food
Yes,
to their home.
yes. And they know very well when they talk to that person's relatives, because them they do not go to that person's home. I said, hey, that guy, he has bales and bales of this, and he has piles and piles of this.
Yes.
It's like a room dedicated, to those goods. Now, and I asked him, so what criteria? He said, the one time I received anything was because the guy was distributing it on the motorbike is somebody I know.
Finish. And look, that criteria is a moving target. It will be this today. It will be something
will move.
tomorrow. Something else tomorrow. The criteria that it started out with on Monday, by Saturday could very well be totally different criteria that is now being used to select. But isn't it sad, though, that even with this 10 billion, and we hear what the president has said yesterday, that you just say,
I think
beg,
the
Joe, we already
sadness-
know that
the
it has seeped
sadness
through the
is what
cracks.
we have become as a society.
exactly.
Here we are talking about the Nyumba Kumi of your area are the ones who should be identifying.
Surely.
Clearly, those people should be giving out the proper names. They should be knowing so-and-so's young people deserve this position. So-and-so, okay, so we've taken one from this family. Let's not take three from this family. Let's
Let's spread it
balance
across
it
and
out.
be fair.
Yeah. But this is not government. It is Nyumba
No.
Kumi. Nyumba Kumi is not government. Local elder is not government. It is your neighbors. And they're the ones who will do this thing.
It's almost as if the very DNA of society is already wired to be corrupt, is already wired to go in a totally different direction from what the welcome would be. That you say, here's 10 billion shillings that is supposed to help people, but it's already inbuilt, it's already ingrained to say, all right, here's 10 billion, let's use 6, and the other 4, we know where it's going to go. That is already the assumption. And isn't it so sad that even before things start rolling out, you already know,
you can already tell.
This one, we already know what is going to happen. It's sad that prediction is what is already going to be
Not
made.
only, it's sad because the prediction is accurate.
Exactly. It's true. It's true.
And yet, at some level, you cannot actually say that someone is entirely wrong in trying to look after the welfare of those who are closest to him. Because that's what it starts off with. But this one goes further.
It goes beyond that.
Because now he becomes a middleman. I get you.
It becomes a business. You want to be on this list? What's in it for me?
Yes.
Of what
a
you'll
trade.
be paid, you give me something.
You're told in advance.
Yeah. So
You're going to be
I'll
getting
get you on the list, but just know that when
they start with, I have negotiated for you
Yes.
500 shillings. That one means that you're getting 800.
Yes.
Okay?
God.
However, so that I also get some, it's put well. They'll write 800, all right? But 500 is what I've negotiated for you. For someone who has nothing, 500.
Take 500.
You'll take it. You wouldn't even think about the 300 shillings.
How does that concern you? Remember Miss A when she was here and we're having this conversation, and she and I had a difference of perspective, because I was of the view that a young man who has gone and taught an elderly person how to open a Twitter account, how to operate it, that is a transfer of skills. And they have taken some time and they have this knowledge. So if they take 10%, I said, my issue here is how much money they get out of it. But this one is different. Because this is not you helping the person. This is a job this is something the government has brought for young people.
Yeah, but it is helping this person get on the top of the list.
Actually,
Here we have 100 youth, and the available slots are 20.
you know, if you asked me, I would divide that money among the 100 so that everybody gets.
So that everybody gets something.
Yes.
So I see you saying that what needs to happen, Clay, is an equitable distribution of resources.
Yes.
Across board. It
Yes.
shouldn't be that a certain number
No.
of people get and then others
If you don't get it,
Let's
you,
be fair.
you for some reason,
Or
It's you who
rotate it.
didn't
You
stick
want
your
to.
head
say,
out.
So this cohort shall work Monday, the different cohort.
Yes,
Tuesday,
this.
different cohort.
Yes.
So everybody.
Everybody gets to
Gets.
get something. Thank you, Eric. You see, you've even fine-tuned it now. You can ensure everybody gets it. Everyone. So long as you are young and you register as a young person, you are able to access that money.
I'm sorry, you're not a mzee in none of these areas, and you will not be consulted.
No.
The wazee in those areas will do what they know best. Pesa imekuja,
Sisi kama wazee
sisi kama wazee tumeamua.
ambao tumeona mengi.
Tumeamua.
Oh, Lord.
It's
Okay.
7:30. Today is International Plastic Free Day. What does that mean, the International Plastic Free Day? Well, we'll be having that conversation shortly, because there's a whole conversation on the Kenya banning the use of single-use plastics. Okay, even new regulations coming in on where you can use this single-use plastics as well in the national parks, in public gatherings, in parks. New regulation has come in to say even here you cannot use those plates that you use, plastic plates in parties, and throw them away.
No.
Don't do picnics at Karura and carry those plates. You will not be allowed to carry. Anyway, let's take a look at traffic and come out of it. We'll have a conversation with the gentleman called Ahmad Ebenezer. And then we will talk in depth about today. Okay.
All right, the normal reasons that we see on the road today means that there's a hold-up on Mombasa Road, a little bit of one on Thika Road, a little bit of a hold-up around Jogo Road, and now let's skip out of Nairobi and look at Mombasa, where it is Friday and it's quite bustly in town, but getting in from Mariakani was just hold up just a little bit, but not too bad, not much happening inside the town of Mombasa. Let's look at Kisumu then, getting out towards the airport on Obote, a bit of a hold-up now coming back into town, but it's nothing major, and it looks like it's going to be traffic-free Friday in Kisumu City. All right, that's what it looks like, a little bit here and there around the country. We'll take a look at what's happening on other roads in Nairobi in a short while. Let us know what you see as well. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. That's how you can reach us and let us know what's going on in your neck of the woods. We want to move as smoothly as we can this morning, and we'll let you know what it looks like on other sides in a bit.
It's 27 minutes to 8 o'clock. Now, it's been a month since the government rolled out this ban on use of single-use plastics. Okay? Today being the International Plastic Free Day, that's self-explanatory. International Plastic Free Day, therefore means that, we are pushing towards getting to a point where we actually are free of plastics. Starting with the single-use plastics, starting with the thin plastics that were banned a couple of years ago. Now we have banned the use of single-use plastics, those plastic plates, plastic single-use cups, especially in public places, banned. Now, I'm not sure whether you can use them at home if you have a party. But then the issue comes about how you deal with them. The responsibility of the user, the responsibility of the producers of this, the responsibility of government, the responsibility of the local authorities when it comes to handling of refuse and recycling. So let's have a conversation with somebody from the Sustainable Inclusive Business Kenya. This is a foundation of the KEPSA, the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and the program manager is called Ebenezer Amadi, and Ebenezer Amadi is joining us on the line. Good morning, Ebenezer.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you? And
good morning to CP and D.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Asante sana.
So today is an important day from where you sit, the International Plastic Free Day.
Yes.
What exactly is this day? Just, for those who've never heard of it.
So this is a day that we remember or try to look at how we conserve the environment, and in essence use less of plastic in terms of waste management, because plastic in itself is a nice product that stays for long and is a bit useful in terms of looking at hygiene.
Yep.
But when we misuse it and do not dispose of it well, then it becomes a problem. So because one person was saying that the same thing that makes it good for us is the same thing that brings a problem to us. Because if something stays for long, let's say more than 1,000 years before it decomposes off, then it becomes a problem if we dispose of it in an improper manner. A number of studies have shown that if the same trajectory continues, then we anticipate that there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. That's the problem.
Wow.
But if we are able to manage our waste properly, then it should not be more of an issue, or if we reduce the use of it and look for alternatives. I'll compare that to, I heard of you talking about the sugarcane industry. So the sugarcane industry also has alternatives. Let's take an example of bagasse. Bagasse can be used to make paper. Still, as we're looking at the sugar industry itself. We have sugar coming to the country, local jobs. So there are benefits coming out from it. Let me give you an example of how waste management is a problem.
Yep.
In your house, you make sure that your bedroom is clean, your sitting room is clean, your veranda is clean, but you take all this garbage and put it in your container under the sink, and you never take it out. That's a problem. So we can say that if you look at some countries and say that the city is clean, right?
Yep.
Do you ever ask yourself, where does this waste go to? It's in the landfill, it's in the downside.
Yeah.
But do we take care of it? Look at an example of what happened in Kisumu. There was a mall where Nakumatt used to be, just behind there. There was a lot of trash there. And you had court cases going on, and the governor trying to move that waste to a different place.
Yeah.
It became a problem. Yeah.
True.
So, Ebenezer, I hear you saying that the problem really is not that we don't want people to use this plastic, but the problem is that in the disposal of it is where we have an issue. So, rather than have to deal with waste management, let's just remove it completely.
Let me start off by the ban that took place, because that's the reference that we'll use a month ago. So when you talk about what has happened in a month, it reminds me of one of our friends who was celebrating his child's birthday. It wasn't a birthday, it was, how do I call it?
A milestone
a month after. Yes, that's what he called it. It's celebrating a milestone.
A milestone. 1 month.
Yes, 1 month. So actually, that will be on the 4th of this month, because it took effect last month on the 5th. So there are a number of items which the government is discouraging for people to go to in particular places. It doesn't mean that you will not use these items at your home. That's the question I had you ask.
Yep.
For example, you using your single-use plastic cup, you can still use it when you go to one of the places where you normally get your coffee. You'd be able to use it probably in your home. But we are saying that these items that have been included in the single-use plastic ban are a problem to the environment. These are items that we dispose of without thinking twice.
Yeah.
You get your cup, you throw it outside your window. You probably don't think twice on how you dispose of it, or if you're going to reuse it.
Yeah.
So we're saying in protected areas, for example, in beaches, national parks, and other areas, you're not supposed to go with, for example, cups. For example, the wrappers of bread, cigarette butts, bags, wet wipes. So there is a list of a number of items that you'll not be able to use when you're going to the parks. I had the
so it's not just the plastic cups and spoons and plates. I've heard you mention wet wipes.
Yeah.
There are a number of items. So the problem actually right now is awareness of what is included in the single-use plastic ban.
Yeah.
I walked into the office, and one of my colleagues who is working on different items, for example, advocacy on other issues, asked me, so one of our friends called me and asked, so am I not supposed to use the plastic containers anymore? But you see, what happened in 2017 is that we started with the ban of the plastic carrier.
Yes.
Right? Which was a problem. We have seen progress going on throughout the years, but of course there are loopholes. Every time you drive down to your rural area, you'll see people selling sugarcane.
Yep.
In those plastic
bags.
Yeah. So you wonder, where are they coming from? So there are loopholes, but we have observed progress over time, where you see supermarkets have tried to change. But that's also a conversation of another day in terms of looking at the current items being used still good for the environment.
Okay.
When you talk about biodegradable products.
I honestly, as basic as it may sound, I think one of the problems, even when we look at 2017 and the plastic carriers were banned, people did not connect between the dangers that the carrier poses to the environment and why they then were being asked to stop. It didn't come into, it just looked at another way for them to be persecuted, right? Now,
Yeah,
I think that it needs to be also be made very clear. This list of items that you talk about now that we're looking at having banned, people may look at them as necessities. So what is the reason why? I mean, just as plainly as it can be put, what is the reason why we're saying these things now should be banned moving forward?
from the perspective of the consumer, why is the reason? Why do we use this product? Basic thing is convenience.
Yes, it's convenient.
Yes.
Yeah, you get home, probably you're a bachelor, you don't want to wash your utensils. What do? You go to a restaurant, buy your food,
And it's also
throw it in the
cost-effective.
dustbin. It's
It's cheap.
That's a discussion. It's cheaper in terms of the current in the short run.
In the immediacy, yes.
If we factor in the costs in terms of the effects to the environment, it is actually expensive. So the discussion there it's also I mean we can delve deeper into it and see, is it cheaper in the short run, is it more expensive in the long run? So one of the things that we need to understand is the impact of these products to the environment and the cost factored in terms of how does it affect the environment. So that is one of the things that is coming up when we look at some of the regulations that are coming up. For example, the extended producer responsibility and the principle where you say the polluter pays. So we are saying that the producer are supposed to be responsible for what is introduced in the market. But of course, this will also be factored in the price of the product. So that means the consumer also will bear this. So in the sense where C.T. Muga says that it's cheaper in the short run, now you'll be able to feel that, and this will be able to help us to look for alternative means for us to use. But generally, we are not saying that plastic will not be used in the country. So let's get that clear, so that we don't cause panic to the public. We're only saying that there are a number of items, 10 items, that will not be using in protected areas.
In specific protected areas. And those are the areas where these single-use items actually come in handy. Talk about taking a drive to the Nairobi National Park and you're going for a picnic and you want to carry those single-use plates and cups, or going to the beach, and that's why you want to use them.
But you see, it's a change of behavior, Eric. For example, if you're used to carrying your water bottle, you buy some water in a shop and you go to the park.
Yeah,
you can find an alternative. You can get a refillable water bottle where you can refill. Actually, it becomes a bit cheaper for you
in the long run.
Because in the long run, that's the keyword. In the long run,
Yeah.
So,
Do you know of any campaign that has been mounted to actually educate people? You talk of behavior change. For behavior to change, there has to be an intervention.
Thank you very much, Citi, for that question. So that is one of the things that we are doing as sustainable, inclusive business as part of KEPS, raising awareness so that people are able to understand what is included in this regulation, what does it mean to the population, and how does it affect their daily lives. And the other thing is also to understand what is the impact to the environment in whatever they use. I mean, you have seen studies trying to find out, are we ingesting plastic in the end when it goes to the environment, when you talk about plastic microbeads. And the fact that, as I mentioned, that this plastic is being washed away to the ocean. So I watched a documentary yesterday, which scientists was trying to find out if, in the end, this plastic, when ingested by fish, we ingest it. But the study is not yet conclusive. So a number of institutions have been able to do this, especially, of course, the government is working closely with institutions, for example, KEPSA, CAM, to be able to raise awareness to institutions. We also have a number of recyclers who are also doing the same. if we talk about waste in general, if you talk about e-waste, you will find an institution called WE Center, that is WEEE, called Waste Electrical Electronic Equipment. So they're trying to sensitize the public that by the end of the life of your electronic product, you can take it somewhere where they will take it, dismantle it, and try to find out the possible components within the products that can be reused or others that could be recycled. So we have something that is called the waste hierarchy that basically says that you try and prevent using some of these products that have an impact to the environment. And then the next step is you try and reuse a product. For example, if you bought a shoe, it does not mean that you wear it once, Mr. Muga, if you have a lot of money. Or the shirt that you wear, you don't wear it once, you wear it several times. So you reuse it. And then if you go to the next step, then you recycle, so that you bring it, you use that, or rather, if you want to call it waste, as input for production. So this is the concept where we call circular economy. If I use, because the discussion today you touched upon the sugar industry, if I use the context of the sugar sector, it can bring to us vividly the concept of circular economy. For example, when we crush the stocks, right? What do you get? You get sugar, you also get molasses. So you can actually make briquettes from the stock, right? Which is used for energy. You will get the sugar, which you'll be able to sell, which is actually, of course, again, energy for the body, right? So there are a number of components or items or products that you'll be able to get out of this process of you producing sugar. And also, in the end, you can also make paper out of it.
Out of the same.
So in essence, you will be reducing the use or cutting down of trees, right? Because the forest cover in the country is good. Right now, I think we are below 10% forest cover.
Yeah.
And the ministry is trying to work on a policy on forestry so that we also increase the forest cover. We are also working on a platform trying to include or bring in the private sector so that we can get corporates through their corporate social responsibility programs. They're able to plant
to work
trees.
together towards that.
Yes.
Let's talk about the responsibility of the producers of plastics in the country, and what responsibility do they have after this has been used. So you've sold it, user has used, and user has disposed. Does the producer come in at any other point, or are we just saying that the producer just did the business of coming in, bringing something to the market, it's taken up by the market, and from that point on, the producer's hands are basically clean?
That's a good question, Mr. Eric. Now, there is a draft regulation that is called Environment Management Coordination Extended Producer Responsibility Regulations 2020, which basically says that the producer will also has the obligation to ensure that what they introduce to the market, they're able to trace it and ensure that they recover it or recycle. So they'll walk through a scheme that is called Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme. So this draft regulation proposes that there will be producer responsibility organizations. So the producer responsibility organization is a membership organization where producers will be able to join. So a producer has two options. They can either have their own in-house system where they're able to trace and get whatever they introduce to the markets or the economy and recycle it to ensure that waste is traced, or they can be part of the larger PRO, which I'm calling the Producer Responsibility Organization. So they will have, so that responsibility lies on them even beyond the point where someone consumes a product and disposes of. So this is what I'm calling the pricing included or factored in the products in terms of the environmental effects of a product.
So the producer will basically now, what we'll see is producers factoring that in, that they are going to be involved in the recycling, in tracing and recycling. So they'll factor that cost in.
Yes, you have to factor it. So you see, in economics, there are two ways for a producer.
That's okay. That's okay. Let them factor in. But how do we hold them to account to ensure that this entire mechanism is working? We see, for example, with a beer bottle, and there's our sodas even. There's a clear route from the point the soda, the bottle has been produced, to when it has been bottled with a commodity, to consumption, back down to recycling. In this particular case with plastics, are we likely really to see that kind of cycle working?
Can I add a question onto that, because it may come twofold in your answer, if I can just assume that then you would across board need to have buy-in from a lot of people on this for them to see the impact that such a change would bring on the environment, for example, in order for them to see that this cycle that Eric is talking about then would change and become complete. There's got to be massive buy-in across the board. Do you see that you would have that as well?
Yeah, sure. So what is happening is that you will find that the private sector is working closely with the government, especially the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. You saw last year in December, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, who were working closely with Kenya Private Sector Alliance, came up with the Kenya Plastic Action Plan. And now, even with the formation or the drafting of the Extended Producer Responsibility Regulation 2020, the private sector is still working closely with them. So that means producers are also active in terms of having this discussion, so that they ensure that whatever they bring into the market is able to be traced and looking at the impact on the environment. So we also have to bring in the consumers in this context, so that we have awareness and also change of behavior in terms of how we dispose of these items. Because you'll find out that sometimes the problem is also in the separation of waste at source. What do I mean by this? We have waste can be categorized into different categories. We have organic waste, we have recyclable waste, and we have hazardous waste. What do we normally do in our homes? If I might ask Eric, do you have two bins in your kitchen? Or probably you don't visit your kitchen. I'm not so sure.
I do, but no, we don't. Bin is bin.
Bin is bin, right?
Yeah.
So when you come home, you're reading a report. It's a piece of paper. You tear it. You're happy in the same bin. You have your banana in the morning. Where do you put it?
The peel goes to the bin.
Yes. So if you were to recover some of the items there and recycle, it becomes a challenge, because now you have mixed up all this waste. It becomes difficult also to retrieve it and to recycle it. The question that Du asked is very important in terms of bringing in different stakeholders to the process, so that we are able to implement these regulations fully. And the producers, as I mentioned, they are also concerned, and also you'll see the initiatives coming in. You'll find that, for example, there is PETCO, which is looking at the recycling of plastic bottles. We are also working closely with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, as KEPSA, to develop a business model for the Producer Responsibility Organization. And you have seen interest from producers coming in even before the regulation comes into effect. People are also signing up and saying, okay, how can we contribute to this discussion? How can we make this regulation to be in a position where we are able to implement it fully? Because sometimes it's one thing to have law or regulation, and it's another thing to implement, right? So if we have a law that cannot be, or regulation cannot be fully implemented, it becomes a challenge. It's more or less like you conduct a research and put that piece of paper on your shelf.
There's something I'd like to ask you. You've spoken about awareness on several occasions and behavior change.
Yes.
What methods do you use to ensure that the public get this awareness? What exactly do you do?
What we do as an institution, as for example, as Capsule, we engage different stakeholders. For example, if you're working with the producers, so we have workshops sometimes. This will also mean probably we have engaging with the community. But at this point with the pandemic, what we have is we conduct webinars. For example, today we have a webinar in terms of trying to help people understand the single-use plastic ban, and also, in addition to that, how the extended producer responsibility regulation will work and the framework in itself.
Do you reach with a webinar, or how many people do you actually reach with, say, Zoom at any given time?
So Zoom goes up to 300 people. So that's at any given time we go to a maximum of 300 people in one webinar. But of course, when
I feel like this is not sufficient, City. I mean, we're talking about public.
No, I feel
47
it's not
million Kenyans using plastics.
Yes.
So we're saying using Zoom. Yes, that was the question.
Why I'm asking is because if you're talking about outreach, yes, and with the situation that we are in, I was hoping you'd tell me radio, because radio reaches a very large population of people. I was waiting to hear TV, because I was waiting to hear.
And then post-COVID Baraza.
I was hoping to hear
churches.
I was that was the point where I was going to.
Okay.
So because the question started with Zoom in terms of asking how many people did we reach in a webinar, right? But beyond that, we also use other communication platforms. For example, we use the newspaper, for example, where we write articles. If you look at, for example, we have an article that has gone round and even published in, I mean, it has gone beyond the borders, even to Uganda, and even in the local dailies that we have. Like what you're doing right now, this is also creating awareness.
It's part of awareness creation.
Yes,
it definitely is.
This is radio, Mr. Titi.
Ebenezer, thank you very much for speaking to us. We've come to the top of the hour. Amadi Ebenezer is the program manager, Sustainable Inclusive Business, which is a program by the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. Today is International, what day again, Ebenezer?
International Plastic Free Day.
There you go, International Plastic Free Day. Have a good one, Ebenezer, and thank you very much for speaking to us. As we go to the top of the hour, just listen to today's proverb from CT.
Today's proverb is, if those with horns cannot manage, what about those without?
Get that? Ebenezer?
Yes.
You got it.
I got it, Mr. Eric.
If you with horns cannot manage, how about those of us without?
Without, but we can also convert it to say, follow the regulation.
Well put.
Asante sana. Have a good one, sir.
You too, CT, Ndu and Eric.
Cheers, thank you.
8 o'clock.
102.5
So what does it look like right now? Not too bad on the roads as we see it. Mombasa Road, we're going to have a little bit of an issue right around where we normally see Mombasa Road. That leads us from Cabanas all the way to General Motors. Today is a little bit clogged up, but it won't be too bad and not for too long. For some reason, it seems that we're afraid of Friday traffic. Thika Road also is not looking too terrible getting into the CBD. Right around the Pangani underpass leading us then into the CBD is A-OK. Jogo Road, however, is taking a lot of the infill from industrial area this morning. But again, it's not too bad. Remember, it's still sprinkling just a little bit, and that means visibility is low in certain areas coming off of Limuru Road and then getting into the CBD. It's going to take us a little bit longer to get in because traffic is quite held up. All right. So don't forget, tell us what you see. SpiceFM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. We want to keep it moving this morning, and we need your help to be able to do that.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Traffic. This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for
3
hard
minutes
truths,
after 8 o'clock.
debates,
Thank you very much
and
for tuning in to Spice FM this morning. 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9. We're in Kisumu 102.5, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7, and we live stream this show everywhere across the globe on www.spicefm.co.ke. We also live stream the show on our social media handles, SpiceFM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Let's move the conversation now back to COVID-19 and the effects of COVID-19 to the economy. We have had conversations with the hospitality sector. We've had conversations with the agricultural sector, with the horticulture sector and floriculture sector, with the aviation industry, everybody else but media. So today is the day we're having a conversation about the impact of COVID-19 on the media industry. Of course, because media broadcast a lot of information. You've also seen the kind of effect that we've had in the media. The listed media companies have already issued their profit warnings. We have also seen in terms of staff cuts in the media industry. And this is not unique to the media, just like I've said. So to have the conversation with us on media, we'll have a Media Owners Association represented by the chairman of Radio Africa Group, that is Kiprono Kitoni, who'll be joining us on the line. And in the studio this morning with us is the CEO of Standard Group PLC, Orlando Lyomu, and the president of the Kenya Editors Guild, Churchill Otieno. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, gentlemen. And of course, we know very well that being people who work in media, we didn't have to make you wake up early to get here. So this is just it's a normal stuff. So we're not going to thank you for waking up early to go to the studio and all those things.
Thank you for doing your job.
We do that with everybody. I'm going to start with you, Churchill. The Kenya Editors Guild over the weekend raised concern over the quality of journalism, especially because of what is happening in the job market in the media industry. A number of layoffs have been announced by several media houses. Even before COVID happened, there had been some warning that media houses were going to be laying off some staff because of tough business environment. And now with this COVID-19, this has been accelerated. And what the Kenya Editors Guild saw was quality of journalism being impacted, and you're raising concern over that, right? So what exactly is it that you are seeing from where you sit as the Kenya Editors Guild as the areas of concern?
Thank you, Eric. Happy to be here. On Sunday, the Editors Guild did release a statement to the nation. And the Guild takes the view that the business of journalism is not just a business for the investors, the shareholders, and the audiences. It is a business for the nation, that citizens need to bother and care what is happening in the media. It was very apparent to us that while there are fairly significant challenges and shifts, if you like, in the media, that reality is mostly only visible to those in the media. we felt it's time to robustly draw in the public, draw in the citizens with us, so that they can see the landscape for what it is. It occurred to us that the job losses not only is a manifestation of the struggles that the media corporations are going through, but it's also a reduction in the strength of the newsrooms. And thinner newsrooms definitely means that the public will be less served by journalists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Orlando, what he's talking about is something that, I mean, you sit in that position where you have to make that decision that we have to go now into staff cuts. We've got to look at our operational costs. And in order for us to survive this wave, you've got to make that decision yourself as a CEO and say, this is the route to take. Among the immediate casualties, of course, is sisi watu wadogo. Right? So just looking at that and what he's raising, do you see the point that the Editors Guild is raising in terms of the quality being affected, the quality of the output of media houses?
Yeah, thanks. Let me start by saying the unique thing about media, because we are not in this alone. I mean, the whole country is going through this pandemic experience. If you look at other industries, they have the advantage that they can take certain intervention measures that are probably more drastic. Some organizations that can stock, that can accumulate stocks, can actually say, okay, produce, close, or shut down. And for the period you're shutting down, then you can keep your expenses as low as possible. Now, media cannot store news because we can't manufacture news in advance. And then we come and put it there and say, okay, now tomorrow, this is what you're going to dish out. That's the first unique situation about the industry we are in. Now, if you look at, say, hospitality, the hotels, the restaurants, again, it was easy for them to just make a call and say, okay, we are shutting down. People are going to go home. When we resume, we'll call them back. Now, in our situation, and I'm sure if you talk to any other media owner or media manager, we can't do that. Because how do you say, for instance, SpiceFM, okay, situation room, you guys go home for 1 month. When things are better, we'll call you back. You kill the product.
True.
Almost instantly. So I think the unique thing about the media situation today is we are struggling to maintain a balance between keeping products that cannot be allowed to shut down, ensuring that those behind these products can be in gainful employment, and most importantly, to continue playing that essential role, which is to inform the public of what is happening. I think in a situation of a pandemic like this, media should not be essential because the government says so. Media is essential because people need to understand what is happening. The behavioral challenges we are seeing around can only be solved by proper communication of the right intervention measures. I mean, today you hear people talking about things like there's no corona. It's just a ploy by government to attract certain, donor funding. But in reality, until you start seeing somebody next to you drop dead, then you understand this thing is serious. So my take is that we have to be careful as a country how we manage which industries. There are certain industries which need to be handled differently from others. I know we've been called all sorts of names. Media has not been a darling of many, for good reasons, and maybe we'll get into that. But for now, I believe that it's important whatever is done, ensure that media survives. I doubt it's about thriving now. It's about surviving and to ensure that the quality of journalism that is required doesn't go down during this period.
I think there are two things that pop up right now. I mean, Orlando, just what you've just said. Number one, ensure that media survives, and then ensure the quality. So who's responsible for those two things? Ensuring that media survives. Is it an external force then that is required to have that done? And then it would appear that ensuring that the quality is maintained seems like an internal thing that would need to be employed.
Yes, Drew. I mean, when I look at who should ensure media survives, remember, in any situation, you have external environment and internal environment. Internal environment is about management's ability to, react, to be able to sort of assess the risk and put on the table intervening measures that make sense. The external environment is less in the control of the managers of the business. Now, internally, as a manager, for instance, I wake up and say, what do I need to do for the business I run to continue running? And I think we decided to take certain measures. And as you know, we sent out communication to people and said, listen, things are getting tough. We foresee a very difficult couple of months coming forward. We propose these certain intervention measures so that we can all see ourselves cross this difficult period. So as far as that is concerned, it's 100% squarely at the table of the managers to make sure that the business is prepared to deal with the challenges that are out there. However, when you come now to the environment, remember, we do not operate in an environment that is sort of just a vacuum. We operate in an environment where regulation is determined by somebody, where policies in place are determined by other people, where the laws of the land affect how we do our business, where certain critical decisions can be made to ensure that we either survive or the opposite happens. Now, my take is, as managers, we can do the best we can to deal with the internal issues. However, if the policymakers do not wake up and realize that there are certain things that must be done to ensure various sectors in this country survive, then no matter how difficult we work as managers, that external environment shall have a big bearing on the outcome of our decisions. Yeah.
We're now joined on the line by the chairman of Radio Africa Group, Kiprono Kitoni. Good morning, Kiprono.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the Situation Room. This is Kenya's best radio station, SpiceFM.
Thank you. I'd argue against that. But
you know what I've just done there. Okay. Having this conversation, Kiprono, and you've heard what Orlando has said, the two factors, the internal factors and the external factors. The internal is what the management can do to keep the business afloat. And the external factors in what the government policies would need to be put in as interventions by government. This also brings in the role of advocacy. I expect that what we've seen from the Kenyan Editors Guild in a statement calling for concerted efforts and on conversations is also something that we should be expecting from the Media Owners Association in terms of advocating for these policies or these interventions to be brought in by the government. Have you, as somebody who sits in the Media Owners Association, have you had this kind of talk?
First of all, let me start by saying I associate myself with what Orlando has said and what Macharia has also spoken about from the Editors Guild. And, media does not live in isolation. I mean, we are not in a vacuum. We are an integral part of global society. And, we are living in very historic and unprecedented times. I mean, the COVID crisis has brought very many challenges. But the truth of the matter is that media had been experiencing problems even before COVID. But now the headwinds that we are facing as investors, have largely created an existential crisis for media businesses. Now, I came across some research and from FIFA, and 54% unemployment in the country, rising from about 30% 2 months ago. 94% reduction in household spend, 42% of our people living in fear of hunger, and many businesses and individuals losing income and losing their jobs is a real crisis for society. But however, we see the public continues to rely on the media for information, for up-to-date updates on a regular or even daily basis in terms of what they must do to stay alive during this very difficult and challenging time. Now, the media owners have actually contributed about 300 million shillings to the COVID response fund committee in terms of free advertising. This is over and above, well over 1 billion shillings if you can calculate the amount of airspace and airtime that's being used to educate the public. But you see, we must also deal with the elephant in the room. That is the convergence of technology, media, and telecommunications. I mean, that is also impacting greatly on our revenue sources because many businesses like Netflix are able to, disburse content without having the infrastructure that we have. I mean, they just they find the content and disseminate it.
Yep.
What the Media Owners Association have done is they've come up with a raft of proposals and sent them to the Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Musheru. This includes tax breaks. This includes requesting the government to provide perhaps long-term funding through any of the multilateral agencies of between 5 and 7% interest over a 5 to 10 year period to enable many companies to actually create an environment, an ultra low cost environment. I personally have no doubt that we have to go to an ultra low cost model to survive. We either need to innovate our products, reduce our costs drastically, or we shall be out of business. The other thing that we have requested the government is to deal with the issue of pending bills. I mean, they have done a fairly good job in the recent past, but we still have well over £1 billion in unpaid bills. We've also requested, for the print sector, that the government considers increasing the number of supplements that the GAA is placing in the national newspapers to make these businesses be able to stay afloat. Other suggestions that we've come up with include even waiving broadcast fees and maybe even complete tax breaks for the time being until we are through with this situation. Thank you.
How far have these conversations gone?
They are at a fairly advanced stage, and we expect that the government will come back to us very quickly. But in the meantime, the reality is, many of our traditional revenue sources from corporates are drying up. Most corporates have taken a very defensive position in terms of spending. Yep. And one of the first things that always goes is advertising. So it is a reality that we face an existential crisis. I don't think today in Kenya there's any media house that can boast of making any profit.
COVID aside, Mr. Kitonyi, is it common for media houses to have emergency plans for situations that are unanticipated?
With specific respect to what? Can you be a bit more...
Well, with respect to any problem. For instance, no one foresaw COVID, yes, but a company can have a problem. Something may happen within the country that you hadn't anticipated. Do you have, let me just ask the question directly, do you have an emergency fund, COVID aside?
We do not have an emergency fund. I mean, most of these businesses operate, for profit. And the way that they derive their profits is making sure that they have revenue from their various sources that are larger than their cost base. And now the situation that we are faced with is that the revenues have dwindled, but our cost base remains largely the same. And even if we were to transition to a lower cost model, the labor law provides that you need to, make payouts to your personnel. Many media houses, I'm sure Orlando will bear this out, including the Standard Group, ourselves, the Nation Media Group, Royal Media, have got a very large establishment. I mean, we are providing a gainful employment to thousands of Kenyans. But with the new reality, of course, that has got to change. Obviously, businesses have to, save and prepare for a rainy day. But over the last 5 to 7 years, the environment has been extremely unpredictable, both the legal and the regulatory environment. The content space has also changed very drastically, and there is a very big need for innovation across the board by media houses. And I do agree that going into the future, we need to actually sit down and look at how we can find a safety net fund that can be able to, salvage these businesses at times such as this.
It's indeed true that, what Orlando and Kiprono are saying, this is not just about COVID, but even before COVID, we already were seeing a change in the business environment. Kiprono mentions the change in the regulatory environment as well, Churchill. Do you see and do you agree that that has contributed a lot to the kind of situation that the media industry finds itself in the country?
I agree entirely, and I dare add that, especially linking it back to the question on quality earlier, that the business of ensuring that there's quality coming out of media is not just a business for the media. Yeah, the consumers of media, the other stakeholders in media must take an interest and actually have a responsibility to look at it. Especially if you read the Constitution well, and you do understand that what we have in Kenya is what we call co-regulation, where the government and the industry come together to see how best to regulate that space. Depending on what policies and what laws are put there, diversity in media can be encouraged, and that diversity will then drive competition, positive competition, and many times when there's positive competition, that tends to push up push up quality of the product that comes out. At the Guild, we're also now saying that the key ingredient, the key input into that quality is the talent that goes into media. And we're beginning to ask ourselves, are our journalism schools producing the right talent for the kind of challenge that we're having to face today? And we're realizing that yes, there's a conversation that we need to have there. Yeah, but ultimately, the responsibility of driving the policies and the legal landscape that we want is the media's. Yeah, because the people who best understand how media needs to operate in a manner so as to serve Kenyans are the practitioners. So even though the room needs a lot more people, the practitioners must lead that conversation. And
Are they leading that conversation? From where you sit, I mean, is Editors Guild, Union of Journalists, Media Owners Association, all these arms of practitioners, are they leading the conversation towards ensuring that there's a better operating environment?
I think there are attempts, but there's a huge room for improvement. For instance, when I look at our content today, there's a very small portion of that content that speaks to the reality of what media is going through today. Yet it's a terribly important question. Yeah. So the mere absence, mere lack of focus on that question, I think, is a self-inflicted wound that we need to deal with, and we need to deal with immediately so that we're able to draw in a much bigger group of people to participate.
I hear you say that our training institutions perhaps do not train the caliber of individuals that media houses could, should we say, benefit from. And yet, many media houses have training managers.
Yes.
Where is the ball dropped? Because you also mentioned that when you talk about quality, you're talking about the people who actually work in media houses. So, there's a training aspect from colleges. There's the aspect within media houses with training managers. So where is the ball dropped? Because I would assume that even when you have to let go of people, the standards will be maintained.
I'm aware that the Standard has an academy that trains journalists. The Nation has a media lab that trains journalists. And if you look at that keenly, it's actually these media houses reaching out to try and fill a gap that otherwise they wouldn't have needed to fill. Yeah. So I think there has been attempts. There has been very, very deliberate attempts and investment to trying to make sure that we bridge that gap and we get the quality of the people that we need. Yeah. But media houses are not training entities. Yeah. There are people in our economy, there are people in our society who are best suited to do this training. Yeah. And we must challenge them to shape up.
So what do people do with the labs and the training institutions? Just fine-tune the product that you get?
I guess that's the opportunity that we have. Unless we make training our core business.
Then it appears the fine-tuning isn't really being very well executed.
Let me come in on that, and because it's something that I've taken note of. You see, when you look at media, let's go back to which is the dominant profession that drives media. It's journalism.
Yep.
I mean, we have all the support services that make media, the gears move around and the clock tick, but it's really journalism that drives media. So if we look at most professions in our country, let's just be very local. They tend to have a very clear training path. That means you go to school, maybe you get your diploma or certificate or degree. Then the next level, you'll find that you have to be a member of a certain professional body for most of these other training spaces. If you're an accountant, then you have to go through another rigorous process to become a certified public accountant. If you're a doctor or a dentist or anything in the medical field, there are all these bodies you have to join and be a member of. If you're an architect or an engineer, similarly. Now, what I've noticed we are struggling with in media is, which is this one body that we can say ensures all journalists have this continuous professional development, continuous education, that ensures that the standards are upheld to a certain degree, that looks at the environment and say, now we have to change the curriculum and you have to learn these other professional lessons to remain relevant. And I think that's the biggest challenge I see we are struggling with in media, because it's left to the individuals to define if they want to become better or not. Now, there's also the other element which is not mandatory in any profession, but is very critical, and this is the element of coaching and mentoring. I don't think any classroom education can make you a good professional. When you are in the field or when you are on your desk, working with more experienced people, and then they impart on you the knowledge, the experience, the lessons they've learned, that's a very critical part of any professional development. I think the challenges that we have in media have to start with where I said, do we have anybody that can come and say, what's the quality we must uphold? You know, the art and craft of journalism, how far can we allow it to drop before somebody comes and says, no, you are teaching outdated skills?
Yeah.
And for me, those are the challenges. And yes, as an organization, we are trying to bridge that gap. But think about how many thousands of students want to become journalists. I don't think it should be left to the media organizations to spend a lot of money trying to fine-tune these rough diamonds into fine-cut jewels.
True.
Yeah.
It's true.
Can I just weigh in on the
yes, go ahead, Kiprono.
Can I weigh in on the talent conversation?
Yes.
You know that the nature of business in media is fiercely competitive. And, you know, we have had many instances in the past where the industry has actually lost out because of this fierce competition that also breeds mistrust amongst the media houses. One such situation was on the digital signal carriage business, where the media industry failed to unite into one entity that could competitively bid and be the signal carrier for themselves.
Yeah.
And if we look at the whole issue of talent, I mean, because of the fact that we are relying on human resources that are talented, many public universities today have media degrees on offer, but then they don't actually churn out the standard of personnel that we are looking for in the industry. So there is actually a great need for an industry-led media academy. Instead of us operating in silos as the Nation Group, the Standard Group, Royal Media, Radio Africa, just to mention some of the leading media houses, it would make a lot of sense if we had one unified approach in this regard, where we have an academy that churns out the sort of personnel that we are looking for. The second thing that we are greatly lacking in is in research and development. And, you know, I don't know whether you know that Silicon Valley, which today houses the largest tech companies, started out as a result of U.S. government-funded research. So research and development in our country is an area that also has not been in great focus at all. And I think there is a need for a closer collaboration between government and all the stakeholding groups in media to actually have research and development to see what it is that we can do to innovate our businesses to avoid them from disappearing into oblivion. So I do think that this is really the time that those conversations need to be had. This is the time that we need to see what is it that we need insofar as our ability to stay alive. We need to look at novel and new ways of funding our businesses, and you know, also just to find a way for a closer collaboration between ourselves and all the major stakeholding groups.
Very interesting conversation. Let's take a quick break and take a look at traffic. We are discussing the media industry this morning in the Situation Room. On the line with us is the chairman of Radio Africa Group, who's also a member of the Media Owners Association, Kiprono Kitoni. In the studio is the president of the Kenya Editors Guild, Churchill Otieno, and the chief executive officer of the Standard Group PLC, Orlando Lyomu. It's 8:30. Keep it right here. Let's take a look at traffic and then resume the conversation.
All right, take a look at it on Udhiru Junction, heading into Wayaki Way and then into the CBDs, where we seem to see it moving a little bit slowly this morning. And on Mombasa Road as well, coming in from the SGR all the way down to the JKIA turnoff. There's the holdup that we expect to see. The fog is still quite low, guys, so that means that fog lights need to be up and visibility is quite low also on Limuru Road, heading into the CBD as well. Apart from that, doesn't seem to be moving too badly in other areas. If it does, do let us know. Realize SpiceFM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. And we want to keep it moving. We know it's the beginning of the month now, and it is Friday. We have also outbound traffic on Thika Road. Surprise, surprise. We'll take a look at that a little bit later and see how that may have changed. In the meantime, in your neck of the woods, if it does change, let us know.
Situation room is Kenya's biggest conversation, the only radio station that has a full-hour talk show in the morning. In the studio is CT Muga Nduo for Eric Gatti, and joining us as guest in the studio this morning, the president of the Kenya Education Group, the chief executive officer of the Kenya Group, PLC, and the chairman of Radio
Spice
Africa
up your life.
Tony, who's joining us on the line. Ndu, you had a question that you wanted to raise.
I'm hearing, talks of innovation and creativity, which we've often said are necessary.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Across the line. The media in Kenya has also been riddled with what I like to call media musical chairs, where we have individuals moving from one media house to another
Mornings
because of
done
competition.
right.
You can't ignore the
94.4
kind of
Spice FM, Nairobi.
across board. Now, if we're saying that a change needs to come about whereby professionalism needs to be at the forefront, where we're saying that this innovation that we talk about, so that people are learning not just on the job, but they come into a media house armed with everything that they need to churn out the best. Isn't it time that this competition then be shelved a little bit and say, okay, this is what we need to do in order, because when the media is called bad, it's not one media house, it's the media in the country. When the media is said to be making steps, it is the media, it is not one media house. Isn't it about time where we put heads together and say, all right, we're not going to wait for the government to put together this body. It's not going to happen anytime soon, probably not in our lifetimes. However, isn't it about time now that say, okay, let's put our heads together and say that if we want to churn out this professionalism that we all seek, isn't it time that we say, let's come together and do something about it now, as opposed to waiting for policy to be established?
Together for what exactly?
If we are saying that we want to have people across media,
yes,
who are armed with the professionalism that is lacking so many times, to bring out this,
So like putting together this
jewel that you talk about.
Single regulatory organization like ISPAC.
If we are waiting for that to be done
board.
in government policy, it's not going to happen now.
I think that organization, that entity exists. It's only that the media is a slightly different kind of cake compared to the other professions.
Slightly.
Yeah. And I say that advisedly. If you read articles 33 to 35 keenly, what it tends to suggest is that the doors into the media must kind of be left open. Yes? So that you might not come with prescriptive standards, yeah, but you could find ways in which you persuade and you encourage and reward quality, so that most of the people go towards that. Why am I saying that? If you look at what's happening in Tanzania, for example, where the government can wake up and shut down a media house, not for any other reason other than because of ideological standings,
Right.
because they don't think that media house is owned or is writing things that they believe in. That's a very risky aspect. Look at what our cartoonists do. Some of them really push the envelope to the edge, and our democracy needs that. Yeah, our democracy needs that we be able to sometimes tell people things that they would rather not hear, and sometimes these are fairly powerful people. So for that reason, it becomes a very tender space to negotiate. But as we sit today, training in media is a mandate vested in standards of training in media is a mandate vested in the Media Council of Kenya. We could have a conversation how that has been managed and how what else could be done around it. Indeed, in our statement, we did invite all the stakeholders in media to come together, so that we can have this conversation and together agree which direction do we need to go, who do we need to talk to. That's being planned now. We just issued the statement on Sunday.
So we have a Media Council of Kenya in existence, established by law, and this is what we are calling a co-regulation, where the media industry participates in the running of the Media Council of Kenya. Now, all these things that we are talking about here, and yet the media has a seat at the table of the Media Council of Kenya. Why aren't they happening at the Media Council of Kenya? Whose responsibility is it to make sure that we are pushing for better quality and better regulation and all that professional development of journalists through the Media Council of Kenya? Whose responsibility should that be?
Remember, the Media Council is a creation of government and the industry. And as it were, the only implement they have is the law as it exists today. If there's need to change that law, if there's need to change that policy, these stakeholders must again come together and say, guys, this is the reality of where we are. We think for us to be progressive, the following aspects need to change. For example, if for-profit media houses is an issue, just for argument's sake, then something must happen in law to encourage funding of journalism in a way other than through commercial ventures.
Yeah.
To make sure that these things still go
on. You asked about competition for talent. I think that would be more of what I'd be interested in. I think the competition comes out of the need for almost instant results. And you have to understand that we are running businesses. I think sometimes people forget that media organizations are businesses with a mandate from shareholders to get a certain level of returns. And if a manager is given their KPIs and, the KPIs say you must have a certain rating, a certain market share, and a certain level of revenues so that you can get a certain amount of profit, then you do what you think is important to achieve that mandate. And the competition for me is just the cutthroat nature of the industry, people trying to be the best and to outdo the other media houses. However, where I differ slightly, if we focus on only people who are good as the media houses, then where is the hope for the young and upcoming journalists? And I think we have a role as media organizations to train young journalists to become better journalists. I think, and I speak for the Standard, about 2 or 3 years ago, we did lose what people considered very prime talent. And I mean, no one wants to lose their best talent. We could have gone back into the market and done exactly the same musical chairs and raided another media house for their best talent. But what did we do? We took a different approach and said, let's take young people and train them to be the future stars. That is a very risky path to take because sometimes these young people do not inspire that natural confidence and you have to groom them and, but if you don't do it, there's going to be a vacuum at some point. So I say that for us to fight for this talent, we have to remember that this talent also has a shelf life. So if all media houses just want the best and the best are expiring after some time, then where will the future ones come from? So I think in our competitive space also, it's important that we try to bring out the next people. But I don't think I would begrudge any media house if they came for my best. It's the nature of the industry.
That's how things are. Yeah. Kiprono, coming to you, and you raised something there with the example of what happened during the digital migration, where media houses, media business owners were unable to come together at a table and agree this together, let's pitch and win this bid to be the transmitters of content. This is indicative of that kind of competition that's in the industry, which gets to a point where it becomes negative. So even now, when you're talking about media houses coming together to push for better quality in terms of training so that all of you can pick from the same pool. So the Standard Group has its own way of training. Nation Media Group has its own way of training. Radio Africa is training in its own way. What is it that needs to happen so that media owners, especially, because these are the owners of business, can look and say there are some things that are going to have benefit for all of us, and then we can compete after that? What is it that needs to happen to bring you people together?
Thank you. That's a very good question, and it's something that actually keeps me awake at night quite a bit. I happen to be the chairman of the Media Owners Association during that whole debate on the digital distribution. And it was very sad to see that we were unable to forge a common approach towards the issue. And as a result, that this actually ended up in the hands of Chinese investors who are today the carriers.
Yep.
And, if we look at the industry today, and these are things that we must deal with ourselves even before we go to government. There's so many nonsensical things that we are doing as an industry. Let's look at the print industry, for example, and I'm sure Orlando will agree with me. I cannot, for the life of me, understand why in 2020 we haven't decided to have a common services company owned by the 3 or 4 major print companies. Why, if I may ask, would the Standard, the Star, the Nation, and the People all print their papers in Nairobi, use their own distribution mechanism separately to send vans across the country with exactly the same product? Many of these vehicles are not optimizing their cargo load, and the presses are all sitting in Nairobi. Why, for example, can't we have the Nation print in Nairobi, the Standard take their press to Mombasa, the Star takes their press to Western Kenya, and we distribute the content and ensure that we have a shorter distance to travel? Those sort of synergies can also be found in areas like distribution. It can be found in areas like, having a common approach with regard to the search for talent through Media Academy. But do we do that? Of course we don't. And the reason we don't do that is because, we are all in a fierce competition for the ad spend that is finite. The pot is only so large. So, you see, unless we also start to really have those deep conversations about what common approaches we can take, that will reduce the cost of our doing business and give us a fighting chance for profitability. I think it's a situation where we either start to be innovative or we face the reality that many of these businesses might not be in existence in a few years' time.
Kiprono, you've talked about a model that happens in other spaces in other countries and seems to work out very well. And it seems like something that can be done when you just mention it. But like you said, also, there's something that's stopping the conversation from going on. And you often see that action comes as a result of conversations that take place. Now, in the space in which we are currently existing, is it not possible for these conversations to start having because once you say it, it sounds like a fantastic idea, and we've seen that it works in other places. So is there something beyond the need for competition that would stop these conversations from taking place?
Yes, there is something. That something is the reality that we could all perish if we don't start to have those conversations. And last weekend, I know that most of the major media owners had a meeting. They had a sit down and they agreed on very many issues. Agreeing on the issues is one thing, implementing is another. And Orlando, I think I challenge you because you were in that conversation. We really need to fast forward some of these conversations that we're having and the measures that we propose to take. We need to build a stronger mutual trust amongst the key players in the industry. We also need to avoid too much fragmentation. When was the last time, for example, and Churchill, I would like to ask you this question, when was the last time there was a serious, even one-day discussion between the Editors Guild, the Media Council, and the media owners? Why do we have to wait for, government or any other third party to convene us? I think it's conversations that we need ourselves to take a front line in terms of approaching those issues.
I could take that last question.
Yeah, respond to that.
I think it's interesting. It should come up because Orlando here was with us in December when editors convened and various entities and media came together at the editors convention, and some of these questions did arise, and there is recognition amongst the different limbs of media that something needs to change, both from the structure of the industry, but more so on the content and how sometimes the business comes together to support the production of that content. I think there's that recognition. And even these conversations are driven by that awareness that we must pull a much bigger number of people to get into that room so that we, as a nation, we can then negotiate that position and agree that this is the direction we need to go. Because remember, for some of these things to change, we might need to involve government as the executive or parliament as the legislature. And to do that successfully, we must have some quality conversation. We must make sure that all of us have a fair and comparable understanding of what the challenge is and where we want to go. Yes.
Just to respond, or in addition to what Kiprono mentioned about different media houses coming together, it is indeed true that several media houses are trying to sit down and just say, how do we work together? I think during the days of plenty, it was normal for everyone to think they can stand on their own 2 feet, and the competitive spirit was at its probably highest level. But things had started changing even before the pandemic was declared. Let's be honest. The media industry was on a sort of a slippery slope, and I don't think you could slide upwards. It was all about going downwards. And if you look at demographic shifts, they were starting to affect how people are consuming our products. If you look at technological disruptions, it was affecting the market share. You see, most of us had a lot of investments in the traditional spaces. Then comes in digital disruption, and all of a sudden, young boys and girls are competing for you.
Yep. They
become
become media houses.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you go to pitch, you find this tiny person seated alone, and probably they walk away with the money. And those are the realities of what is facing us now. If you cannot influence your revenues, as Kiprono said, then it boils down to your costs. But remember, costs have a certain limit after which the business starts falling apart. And I think what we can do now is to come together as media houses, eliminate the wastage. I mean, as I said, all the printing presses are packed in Nairobi. These vehicles are going up country, maybe 30% capacity. The rest of it is just oxygen you're transporting from Nairobi to wherever you're going.
Yeah.
And we are realizing this fact, and you're saying, let's come together. If it is transport, how do we fill these vehicles and share the costs? Printing, we are starting to say, if you want to print the paper, how best can we do this? So that, we have very state-of-the-art printers, among the media players, but they're operating as, say, 3 hours a day, max 4 hours a day.
Good Lord.
Out of 24 hours.
Yeah.
So in terms of capacity, you can see also what's happening. So I agree with what Kiprono said, and as the team lead of the standard side, I'm very committed to ensuring that we come together with the others and try and sort our problems internally. Remember, I said there's the internal and the external. If we can bring down our cost to a level where we can be profitable at very low revenue levels, then that works for the business.
Good that you brought up the issue of technological disruptions. The media industry in Kenya has been accused by many observers of just sleeping and waiting to continue selling the newspaper while the world has moved into digital. Now, I know that there's a lot of movement towards digital in the media houses. Churchill Otieno is the head of digital in Nation Media Group. We have a whole department that you've set aside, that you set up, Orlando, in Standard Group, headed by a managing editor looking at digital. Same thing is happening with you, Kiprono, with digital. But there are those that are saying, guys, you're trying to catch up with the curve. It moved a long time ago, and you're still stuck at a point where you're still trying to sell your paper on a digital platform as opposed to selling content on digital.
I agree with you 100%. I wish you could attend our management meetings, because then you come and be my advocate here. It's true, we are quite behind the curve. Unfortunately, I wish we were in the middle of this curve, because then maybe we'd be able to catch up faster. You see, when technology came and disrupted our space, most media organizations saw translating the paper into a PDF format as digital.
Yeah.
And we focused on distributing this paper, and we said, okay, we've gone digital. And our digital was just distributing the paper until we were taught that other people can take the same paper and distribute it for free. So I do agree that we need to do more than just take the paper, because it's no longer about the paper, it's about the content. And in the digital space, you have to realize that the game is played completely different. A few years ago, I attended a seminar that was very eye-opening. And this is something that we can't run away from. When you move from the traditional space to digital, the multipliers change. Now, what happened in the music industry? There's a time you could buy the vinyl things, then you move to the tapes, and then you finally move to the CDs. Now, what you may not know is that when the compact discs were in the market, the amount of money the value chain produced for one CD, it took about 600,000 to 700,000 downloads of music to make the same amount of money, right? Now, we moved from downloads. Now we are in streams. People are streaming. The number, I remember being mentioned that you need about 2 million streams to make the amount of money that used to be made from one
CD.
One CD.
And I think that's the same thing that's happening in our industry. A full-page ad in the paper, I don't know how many digital ads you'll need. I need to find the multiplier, but you need so many digital ads to just recoup the amount you'd have made from one full-page ad.
Yeah.
So despite the fact that we are trying our best, I think the challenge is media houses are this sort of gigantic monoliths that have a lot of people. Look at the Standard Group, almost 1,000 direct employees, another about 400 indirect employees. Now, how do you ensure you survive when a digital ad gives you probably, a few dollars? Yeah, you need so much of this to be able to continue operating the same. From where I sit, our organizational structures will have to change. We have to start becoming leaner. We have to bring in the right people. I still am a strong believer that the technological advancements and whatever media has to be done has to be journalism-led. Today, I see a lot of what we are trying to do being led by non-journalists. But remember, if you have to be a winner in content, what we need is the editorial people are the ones who have to come to the table with the innovation, with the ideas that will transform journalism, because it still goes back to content. And if we can't get it right at the product level, it doesn't matter how many other innovative ideas we come with as management, we will struggle. So it is a challenge, and it's one that we can't run away from.
Orlando, maybe I should just add something. I mean, we are living in what they call COVID times. And we are told that the symptoms of COVID are difficulty in breathing, high temperature, and general body ache.
Yep.
I think the media is actually suffering from COVID. Because the whole industry now is gasping for air.
Yep.
And, we need to actually literally, like the rest of the world is doing, find a vaccine that will see us through. And one of the things that I just wanted to, pen out by saying is in 2018, we passed the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act. And right now, one of the biggest threats to media is actually citizen journalism. I mean, where everybody is a journalist on a social media platform. And this has led to a very big problem around the whole issue of fake news, libels, and slander. And again, we need to really, work closely with the judiciary to see to it that we have a robust legal and regulatory environment to actually safeguard the general public from some of the problems that we've seen social media presents to us. So I am confident that if we all put our heads together, we can actually find a way to get us out of the COVID situation that we are in.
Let's close the conversation by bringing the issue back home to what's happening right now. The Nation Media Group started layoffs yesterday. We saw MediaMax laid off, Radio Africa. I'm sure there's something in the pipeline. Standard Group, I don't have to ask. There's something in the pipeline. I mean, you already started by saying this is something that's happening to us. The humane side of it, though, is what very many are raising questions with. When it has to happen this way. I mean, yes, you've got to cut your costs. You've got to let people go. But how you do it is also raising a concern. Sending SMSs in the middle of the night or calling people in the middle of the night, come tomorrow for your letter. What do you say about that, Orlando?
Okay, I don't want to speak for the whole industry when it comes to that because the shoe pinches the wearer. And if I start commenting about other media houses, I think I'll be speaking out of turn. But when you look at what's happening, it's a case of... how do I put this so that it makes sense? It's a case of if the ship is going down and you only have so many lifeboats. How do you make the decision who goes down with the ship and who takes the lifeboats? And I think that's the argument you can have around the humane aspect of sending people home, because I don't think there'll ever be a humane way of telling somebody you're jobless.
Right.
I mean, we can try and sugarcoat it, but the reality is, and I've done this before, when you talk to that young person and they face you and you tell them, I'm sorry, this is your letter. If you see the emotions they go through, if you see some of them even start telling you their history and their problems, and you have to deal with that as a manager. Do you block out the feelings? Do you just, become this sort of mind block kind of person? You have no feelings. There's no humane way. Unfortunately, and I always tell people that's the distasteful part of leadership. You have to do things that will not always make you feel happy. If you don't do those things, the ship goes down. And you want to make sure that you save as many people as possible. So, unfortunately, a few might have to be sacrificed for the larger good to happen. So, my take is organizations should be a bit more professional about it. That's the only thing I can say. It's not really about being humane, it's being professional. Why call somebody in the middle of the night? I mean, is it something you're scared to do? No. Just face the reality, address people like human beings, tell them the truth, and explain why you are not the other person. Because you might be helping these people who are leaving when they go out and start looking for other jobs. Because if it was about performance and you don't tell them, then they'll not take that intervening time to improve their skills. So for me, it's how it's done. It's about the how, and I would detach the emotions to it. I would remove this whole talk that you can be human about. I don't think you can be human.
Actually, I wish to differ with you. You can. And whereas the buck stops with the CEO, this is squarely in the HR department. Squarely. This is their job. It is their task to ensure that what you're discussing here is understood. It is hoped that their training will have equipped them to be able to inform you, the CEO, to say, this is how we are going to do it. Churchill, what do you think?
Absolutely, because many times when these retrenchments happen, there's usually a warning. There's time to plan for it and assess fairly comprehensively how to handle it. My biggest battle with the way we've done it is that almost everybody has left out the audience in doing that. You hire Eric here, you hire Ndu, and every single day they're talking to our ears for years. Over time, we develop a relationship with them. Right. Then one morning, they're just not there. Nobody tells you where this fellow went. Did he die? What happened? Yeah? Worse is TV, because you're not only here, but you actually see. You see them in your most intimate space, your own living room. Some of us have TVs in our bedroom. We see these people in our bedrooms. Then one evening, they're just not there. Nobody's telling you where they've gone. So I think our attitude must always remember that there's an audience that we must involve in almost every single decision we make in media, because the business of media is a public one. Yeah, the entities that drive media could be private entities, could be private businesses, but the business that they do is a very, very public one. And I think we must find ways to involve the audience in all this. Yeah.
Gentlemen, 1 hour is a very short time. We've come to the end of the hour. So I'm going to give each of you a moment to give your closing remarks, and I'll start with you, Churchill.
The space must be reimagined. The editors have stepped forward, and we believe that the owners and the various the correspondents, the union, the regulator, even the government will join us at the table, and that we'll find ways to bring in views from the public, to find a new direction and new ways to drive media, so that we have a media that is thriving, that is diverse, but more importantly, that takes care of the public interest.
Thank you very much. Kiprono?
All I'll say is thank you very much for this very important conversation, and let's just endeavor to stay safe. This is a very challenging time, not just for media, but for all of us as human beings globally. So thank you for introducing this conversation. I look forward to participating in more in the future.
Asante sana.
for me, I'll try and close on a different note and say that media is very critical, not because we want to be profitable as individual organizations, but you have to think of the bigger picture. I think today we have a lot of content producers in this country who are aspiring to become, production houses, musicians. A lot of people rely on media for their survival and for their thriving. I think when we are talking about what can government do about media, let's not just look at our headlines. Let's not just look at the individual media houses, but remember that if media does not exist, all these content producers will have no platform to practice what they are doing. So it's critical that the role of media should not just be narrowed down to what the papers say or what the TV say, but to the value chain and the whole ecosystem that media sustains. And I think that's what we need to fight to defend. Otherwise, if we don't do that, then we'll think we are just affecting the media houses, but in reality, there'll be a bigger impact to the economy.
Profound words. Thank you very much, Orlando Leomu, CEO of Standard Group PLC, Churchill Otieno, the president of the Kenya Editors Guild, and Kiprono Kitoni, chairman of Radio Africa Group. Gentlemen, as we conclude the show, listen to today's proverb from C.T. Muga.
Today's proverb comes from Uganda. If those with horns cannot, what about those without?
Say again.
If those with horns cannot manage, what about those without?
Self-explanatory, isn't it? Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
All right, so now let's look at Langata Road today, heading towards Karen. Accident at the junction, and that's leading towards Karen, and it seems to be quite serious. Police are on the scene trying to sort that out and get things moving. And if we look now, that will affect traffic going all the way down to the T Mall roundabout, unfortunately. So that means that's going to be chock-blocked. It looks rather clear on Thika Road inbound. Outbound, however, it is Friday, so we expect that there will be a lot of traffic outbound as people try to make weekend plans outside of the metropolis. It's building up on Waiaki Way, right around the 87. There's an option. Limu Road coming into town also is quite packed. Visibility is rather low on Mombasa Road, Limu Road, and in parts of Westlands as well. So we want to be careful there, guys. SpiceFM KE, a little bit more time. Tell us what you see that could be going on so that we can keep it moving.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Traffic. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state